Chapter 2132. Tantai Xian, you are playing with fire. Ji Tianqing looked at Empress Tantai coldly and warned her in a solemn tone. Empress Tantai didn't take it seriously. She curled her lips in disdain and sneered, "Now you are tied up by my God-binding rope and can only be at my mercy. Besides threatening me, what can you do to me? I won't play with fire tonight, I will only play with you." In Ji Tianqing's mind, the voice of burial of heaven immediately sounded. Ahem. I have endured for a long time. This time, I really can't help it. There are some things that need to be said. This Tantai Xian has already fallen in love with you. Why don't you take pity on her and give in to her? Ji Tianqing's forehead was full of black lines. He replied with his divine soul, "Burial of heaven, you are encouraging me like this. Are you tempted? Why don't you transform into a human form and go back with her instead of me and accompany her?" Humph. Burial of heaven snorted disdainfully and said in a low voice, "This old man is the soul of the divine sword, not a mortal creature. How can I have a mortal heart? However, her so-called God-binding rope is a fake. You can obviously break free. Why are you willing to be tied up by her? This old man thinks you have a hard mouth but a soft heart. Your mouth says no, but your body is very honest. Shut up." Ji Tianqing shouted angrily, "Don't frame me. I don't have that kind of idea. I have always stayed away from this kind of wanton crazy woman. The reason why I didn't make a move is that I want to see what she wants to do. 1,000 years have passed, and the situation of the continent is different from before. It has long become very complicated." "Okay, you are right." Burial of heaven responded indifferently, "Then you go back with her to the bridal chamber." "You!" Ji Tianqing was suddenly angry, but he couldn't defend himself. At this time, Empress Tantai saw him silent, stretched out 2 fingers, raised his chin, and asked with a charming smile, "What are you thinking about? Do you think it is a bit inappropriate for us to consummate our marriage here in the wilderness?" "Ha ha ha, don't worry, I will take you back to the imperial court and settle you down in the palace. I will also send many maids to serve you." After that, she carried Ji Tianqing in one hand and flew to the southeast. Ji Tianqing frowned, and a look of doubt flashed in his eyes. He thought, imperial court? Which imperial court? Is it the imperial court of the imperial court of Chang? Can it be that Tantai Xian, and the imperial court of the empire? Thinking of this, he felt, things, the matter. Therefore, he suppressed his doubts and allowed Empress Tantai to carry him as they flew through the night sky at lightning speed. Empress Tantai's speed was extremely fast. Every step she took could cross 50 miles. In a short 2 hours, she had flown 30,000 kilometers away. In order not to be discovered, Empress Tantai flew 10,000 meters above the clouds and sped up. About 10 hours later, she finally arrived at the imperial city of the Changyang Empire. At this time, she used the invisibility secret technique to hide herself and Ji Tianqing. Whoosh! She descended from the sky and flew to the bustling imperial city of the Changyang Empire. It was afternoon, and the warm sun shone on the Changyang Empire. But inside and outside the Changyang Empire, there was a bleak scene. The city walls were full of armored soldiers. In the imperial city, there were no crowds or merchants. The streets and alleys were deserted. Obviously, most of the people in the Changyang Empire had fled because of the war in the north. Ji Tianqing looked at the Changyang Empire calmly and thought to himself, Tantai Xian were really colluded with the Changyang Empire. Her nest is in the imperial city. So, it must be Du Qingchang who deliberately arranged for Guanji to be a spy by my side. After a while, Empress Tantai took him and flew into the magnificent imperial palace. The imperial palace of the Changyang Empire was located in the center of the city. It covered more than 10 miles and had tens of thousands of houses and palaces. It was very solemn and imposing. Empress Tantai's residence was in the inner courtyard of the imperial palace, in the main hall of the Phoenix Palace. Phoenix Palace? Isn't this the palace of the empress? Could it be that Tantai Xian, she married the Changyang Holy Emperor and became the empress? Ji Tianqing frowned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Sure enough, after Empress Tantai entered the Phoenix Palace, she returned to the luxurious and bright palace. She threw Ji Tianqing on the bed and covered him with a brocade quilt. Then, she called in a dignified tone, "Where is Wanru?" The door of the palace opened immediately. A young woman in a palace dress walked in quickly with her head lowered. She walked to the middle of the palace and bowed respectfully. "This servant greets the empress. Please give me your orders." Empress Tantai said calmly, "Help me bathe and change my clothes." This servant obeys. The maidservant bowed and exited the bedchamber. Empress Tantai returned to the bedside and stroked Ji Tianqing's cheek. She smiled tenderly and said, "Don't worry, I'll take a bath now. I'll be clean and then I'll pamper you." Ji Tianqing felt a chill and goosebumps appeared all over his body. He almost couldn't help but break free from the god-binding rope. But he held back, closed his eyes and remained silent. He wanted to see what other tricks Tantai Xian had up her sleeves. Most importantly, what role did the Changyang Holy Emperor play? Unknowingly, a quarter of an hour passed. After Empress Tantai took a bath, she took off her half-foot-high phoenix coronet, tied her hair into a noble woman's bun, and changed into a bright yellow dress. She returned to the palace alone, closed the door, and cast a spell to cover the entire palace. In this way, no matter what happened in the palace, the outside couldn't hear it. After she was ready, she kicked off her shoes and walked barefoot on the soft carpet toward the phoenix bed. Swoosh! The quilt was lifted. Empress Tantai stood by the bed and looked at Ji Tianqing with a smile. She reached out and brushed the long hair on her shoulder. She said with a charming face, "I've waited for 1,000 years, and my wish is finally coming true. Today, you are my most beloved Kenshin. I will do my best to serve you and bring you the most unforgettable pleasure. But tomorrow, you will be my male pet and servant. You can only be humiliated and ordered by me. So, enjoy today." After saying that, she slowly leaned over and sat on Ji Tianqing's body. She reached out and untied her long dress. An invisible charm spread out from her body and enveloped Ji Tianqing. The curtains around the phoenix bed also fell silently. A scene of spring breeze was about to unfold. But at this moment, Ji Tianqing, who had been keeping his eyes closed and silent, suddenly spoke. "I've already said that you are playing with fire. My patience has been exhausted, and it's time to end everything." Chapter 2133. Empress Tantai had just taken off half of her clothes and was about to untie the white veil on her chest. But when she heard Ji Tianqing's words and saw the god-binding rope break into more than a dozen pieces, she was stunned on the spot. At the same time, Ji Tianqing raised his hand and slapped at her. Bam! The palm hit Empress Tantai's chest and sent her flying on the spot. She fell into the bedroom. Puff! She opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face became as pale as paper. She did not have time to tidy up her clothes and quickly stood up. Her eyes widened as she stared at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. "My god-binding rope. How is this possible? How can you destroy my god-binding rope?" She never thought that the god-binding rope that she had searched the entire continent to find would be broken by Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing, who was tied up, was originally a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered by her. But now, everything was ruined. Ji Tianqing reached out and brushed off the 2 pieces of god-binding rope. He said expressionlessly, "The real god-binding rope is a divine artifact. How can you have it? This god-binding rope of yours is nothing more than an ordinary saint artifact." "No. This is impossible. Empress Tantai shouted coldly and shook her head repeatedly. She could not accept this result. He won't lie to me. This god-binding rope is indeed refined from dragon tendons. Ji Tianqing said indifferently, only the dragon tendons of the ninth heaven divine dragon can be refined into a real god-binding rope. Your god-binding rope is made from the tendons of a flood dragon. Who is this he you are talking about? He vaguely guessed that this god-binding rope was not found by Empress Tantai. It was very likely that some man had refined this dragon tendons into a magic weapon and gave it to her as a god-binding rope. Empress Tantai did not respond to Ji Tianqing's words. She looked at the broken rope on the ground and cursed angrily, "Damn bastard, I trusted you so much and even became your wife. How dare you lie to me?" When Ji Tianqing heard her say this, he immediately understood that the person she was talking about was most likely the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor. At this time, Empress Tantai raised her head and glared at him with resentment. So what if the god-binding rope is fake? Since you're here, don't even think about escaping. As she spoke, she formed hand seals with both hands and shot out dozens of colorful lights at lightning speed. Swish! Swish! The multicolored light flew out of the sleeping chamber and landed in all directions, immediately activating a sealing formation. Shwa! Outside the sleeping chamber, a five-colored light shield with a radius of thousands of feet immediately lit up, enveloping the entire sleeping chamber. This was a saint-level grand formation that Empress Tantai had spent a lot of time and effort to set up. As soon as the grand formation was activated, it immediately released a terrifying invisible force and suppressed Ji Tianqing. At the same time, two colorful long silk appeared in Empress Tantai's hands. If I can't get the man, no other woman can. She glared at Ji Tianqing with a venomous look in her eyes. She waved a pair of rainbow-colored long silk and swept it towards Ji Tianqing. Swish! 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 In an instant, the long silk danced out hundreds of colorful dazzling lights, like sharp blades, shrouding his figure. You've already gone mad. Ji Tianqing shouted in a deep voice, "Today, we'll settle this once and for all." As he spoke, he formed a sword seal with both hands and released hundreds of sword lights, stabbing toward Empress Tantai. These sword lights were more than 10 feet long, formed by the power of stars and five-colored divine thunder. Their power was very violent. Bang! 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 The sword lights collided with the colorful dazzling lights, causing a series of muffled sounds, shaking the entire sleeping chamber violently. A violent shockwave exploded, instantly blowing up the sleeping quarters into smithereens. The ground paved with golden stones collapsed and the surrounding walls burst into rubble, turning a radius of 10,000 feet into ruins. Only the light barrier with a radius of 10,000 feet was still intact, sealing the ruins. Heavenly Maiden scattering flowers. A cold light flashed in Empress Tantai's eyes as she finally made up her mind to use her trump card. She shouted coldly, waved the colorful long silk with both hands, and flew gracefully into the sky. The next moment, her figure became illusory and blurred, spinning at an extremely fast speed. Swish! 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 The colorful long silk splashed out endless light blades and pink light balls, like a torrential downpour, drowning Ji Tianqing. Within a radius of 10,000 feet, it was completely filled with light blades, like a pink hurricane. Not to mention a body of flesh and blood, even a divine artifact would be crushed into powder. However, Ji Tianqing's body lit up with silver starlight, forming an oval-shaped shield to protect himself. Thousands of light blades kept stabbing the starlight shield, letting out crisp, ding-ding-dang-dang sounds, but they could not break the shield. No matter how strong the light blades were, and how fierce their auras were, they could only leave dents on the starlight shield. Ji Tianqing continued to circulate his magic power, and soon the dents on the shield were repaired, leaving him unharmed. He looked up at Empress Tantai and said expressionlessly, Tantai Xian, give up. 1,000 years have passed, and you haven't made much progress. You're only a level 7 martial sage. It's harder than ascending to heaven if you want to kill me. His tone was calm and indifferent, as if he was stating a fact. Empress Tantai was so angry that she had almost lost her mind and patience. No. I don't believe it. You've just become a martial sage, how can you be my opponent? In another year or so, you'll be even stronger, and I won't have a chance anymore. Ji Tianqing shook his head gently and said coldly, in terms of martial strength, you're too late. In terms of feelings, you've never had a chance. Alright, I don't have time to play with you anymore. You should wake up. After saying that, he slowly raised his right hand, put his index finger and middle finger together, and pointed to the sky. Sword, come. As he shouted coldly, a huge crack suddenly appeared in the distant sky. A dazzling golden light appeared, as dazzling as the sun. Swoosh! It was a sacred and mighty giant golden sword. It fell like a meteor, and slammed towards Empress Tantai. At this moment, it was as if there were two suns in the sky. The dazzling golden light shrouded the entire Red Sun Imperial City, and no one could open their eyes. Kaboom! The giant golden sword, which was thousands of feet tall, slammed into the seven-colored light shield with a divine power that could pierce through everything, and exploded with a loud bang. The seven-colored light shield was pierced through by the giant sword, and a huge hole appeared. Then, the giant golden sword slammed into Empress Tantai, and her figure was submerged. Kacha kacha. A series of clear and melodious sounds of explosion rang out as the seven-colored light barrier within a radius of 3,000 meters collapsed, bursting out with dazzling fragments that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Chapter 2134. Bang! The destructive golden light shockwave spread out in all directions and engulfed the entire palace. Thousands of houses and palaces were destroyed into smithereens by the golden light, raising a cloud of dust. For a moment, the entire Scarlet Sun Imperial City shook violently as if a super earthquake had happened. It was unknown how many houses and buildings had collapsed in this disaster. Many people were injured or killed because of this. After a long while, the dust that covered the sky gradually dissipated. The Scarlet Sun Imperial City that was shaking non-stop also gradually returned to its peaceful state. Countless soldiers, guards, and civilians all rushed out of their houses and looked in the direction of the Imperial Palace. Everyone's face was filled with shock and confusion, not knowing what had happened. Tens of thousands of Imperial Guards, under the lead of dozens of Imperial Guards commanders, rushed to the Phoenix Perching Palace. However, when they arrived at the scene, they found that the Phoenix Palace had disappeared and only ruins were left. There was a handsome young man in a white robe standing in the sky with an indifferent expression. His expression was emotionless as he looked down at the ruins calmly. Many of the Imperial Guards looked at his feet and saw a huge crater. At the bottom of the deep pit, a woman covered in blood and dust slowly flew out. She looked very pathetic and her long dress was already in tatters, vaguely revealing a few patches of her snow-white skin. Her delicate and beautiful face was also covered in dirt and blood, making it almost impossible to see her face clearly. However, she did not care about her serious injuries or her pathetic appearance. She staggered up into the air, staring at Ji Tianqing with a venomous look in her eyes, and growled with a hoarse voice, "Bastard! You heartless, and merciless bastard! I hate you! I will hate you for the rest of my life and I will never forgive you." Ji Tianqing looked at her calmly and was silent for a moment before he said, "After this, I hope you can wake up completely and stop being so stubborn. You are already the Empress of the Scarlet Sun Empire. Since you have chosen the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor, you should support him wholeheartedly. Don't cause any more trouble and don't have any unrealistic thoughts. Today, I can spare your life, but this is the last time. If you continue to pester me, don't blame me for being ruthless and taking your life." Hearing his words, the imperial guards who came from all directions dispelled their doubts and confirmed Empress Tantai's identity. Instantly, countless imperial guards pulled out their swords and sabers and looked at Ji Tianqing with hostility. How dare you attack our empress? Men, take this arrogant bastard down. How dare you offend Celestial Empress, you should die 10,000 times for your crimes. Dozens of Imperial Guard commanders shouted with righteous indignation. They could not wait to attack Ji Tianqing with their swords. Ji Tianqing ignored these Imperial Army soldiers, not even bothering to glance at them. Empress Tantai raised her sleeve to wipe off the blood on her face. She looked at him with a sad face and sneered crazily. Ha 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 ha. How vicious and merciless. You want to take my life. You are indeed ruthless and heartless. Since you hate me so much, you can kill me now. After saying that, she opened her arms and flew toward Ji Tianqing without any defense. She looked as though she was ready to die. The surrounding Imperial Army marshals were all startled by this sight and hurriedly rushed over to stop and rescue him. Empress, come back quickly. Don't panic, Empress. We are here to save you. Several Imperial Guard commanders flew toward Empress Tantai and tried to pull her back. The remaining 30 Imperial Guard commanders waved their swords and sabers at Ji Tianqing, besieging him. Ji Tianqing turned his head and glanced at the commanders expressionlessly. He waved his sleeve as though he was swatting flies. Swoosh! A dazzling golden light swept over and struck the 30-some Imperial Army marshals. With a muffled explosion, all of them were thrown back and fell into the ruins with blood spurting out of their mouths. At the same time, the other Imperial Guard commanders rushed to Empress Tantai's side and tried to stop her. Empress Tantai did not appreciate their kindness. She waved her palms and sent the Imperial Guard commanders flying. Get lost! Ji Tianqing stared at her and said coldly, Tantai Xian, do you really think I am a merciful person and will not kill you? Empress Tantai seemed to have gone mad. She laughed contemptuously and said, ha ha ha. Who are you? You are the sword god whose name shakes the world. Who do you not dare to kill? Not only have you killed millions of enemies, but you have also killed the woman who was infatuated with you. How heroic you are. Ji Tianqing frowned and said with a cold expression, since you're so stubborn, I'll fulfill your wish. As he said that, a black light shone in his right hand and the sword of burial of heaven appeared. He held the sword of burial of heaven and placed it on Empress Tantai's neck. As long as he waved the sword in his hand, Empress Tantai's head would fall to the ground. Empress Tantai stared at him and sneered, why are you still hesitating? Do it. Do you still want me to help you? As she said that, she held the sword of burial of heaven and placed the tip of the sword on her forehead. Come on. Pierce my forehead with your sword and shatter my soul along the way. Only then will I die completely. That's good. I'm completely awake now, and I won't bother you anymore. Empress Tantai said coldly and resolutely. The Imperial Guard commanders were all frightened. They broke out in cold sweat and their hearts were in their throats. The dozens of Imperial Guard commanders all ignored their own injuries and roared hysterically. Bastard, put down the sword. That is our Empress. If you dare to kill our Empress, our Red Sun Empire will not rest until you are dead. Boy, are you not afraid of Holy Emperor Red Sun's revenge? These Imperial Guard commanders could not stop Ji Tianqing, so they could only use Holy Emperor Red Sun to intimidate him. But it was useless. Ji Tianqing ignored the Imperial Guards and looked deeply at Empress Tantai, who was close at hand, and said in a deep voice, Tantai Xian, why are you so stubborn and unrepentant? Only by killing you can I put an end to. Before he could finish his sentence, a thunderous roar suddenly came from the sky above the imperial city not far away. Stop! This was a middle-aged man's angry roar. It was like a thunderbolt that shook half of the imperial city. Everyone turned their heads in unison and saw a wisp of fiery light speeding towards them. In just 2 breaths, the ray of fire flew from 100 miles away and landed beside Ji Tianqing and Empress Tantai. Swoosh! The dark red flames faded away, revealing an old man with a medium build and white hair. Chapter 2135. Without a doubt, he was the Saint Emperor of the Scarlet Sun Empire. The tens of thousands of imperial guards around the ruins fell to their knees and kowtowed respectfully. "Greetings, Your Majesty." The tens of thousands of people shouted in unison. The sound waves were like a flood, deafening to the ears. However, Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun ignored the imperial guards and stared at Ji Tianqing fiercely. He shouted, "How dare you assassinate my empress? Why aren't you surrendering?" Ji Tianqing kept the sword of burial of heaven and looked at Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun expressionlessly. Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun's appearance was similar to a man in his 50s. His skin was old and loose, and his hair was half black and half white. He looked very old. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown. He thought to himself, strange, Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun didn't exist 1,000 years ago. He must have broken through to the martial saint realm less than 1,000 years ago. A martial saint less than 1,000 years old should be very young. How can he be so old? Even his strength is only at the 6th level martial saint realm. He's not even comparable to Tantai Xian Er. Could it be that Tantai Xian has absorbed his strength and essence? That's why he's so old and weak. At this time, Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun saw Ji Tianqing keeping the sword and heaved a sigh of relief. He quickly flew to Tantai Xian Er's side and hugged her in his arms. He asked with concern, "Lin Xian Er, how are you? Are your injuries serious? Who is this bastard? Why did he try to assassinate you?" Empress Tantai glanced at Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun expressionlessly and struggled to break free from his embrace. She said coldly, "I'm fine." Saint Emperor Scarlet Sun didn't feel awkward and doted on Empress Tantai. He said in a dignified tone, "Xian Er, don't worry. This bastard dares to assassinate you. I won't let him off easily. No matter who he is, I'll make him pay the price." Empress Tantai glanced at him contemptuously and sneered, "Ahaha. You said it yourself, don't go back on your words later." The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor still didn't know. He nodded solemnly and said, "I'm a man of my words. How could I lie to you?" Empress Tantai sneered again and asked in a deep voice, "Have you never lied to me? How do you explain the God-binding rope?" Ah! Red Sun Holy Emperor was stunned. He asked, "What's wrong with the God-binding rope?" Empress Tantai said coldly, "The God-binding rope you gave me is just a fake made from the tendons of a flood dragon." This. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor was at a loss for words. He had an awkward smile on his face as he explained, "Lin Xian Er, don't be angry. The real God-binding rope is a divine weapon, where would this emperor find it?" Empress Tantai sneered, pointed at Ji Tianqing and said, "All right, let's not talk about the God-binding rope for now. Now, it's time for you to fulfill your promise and kill him." The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor nodded without hesitation and said, "All right, Xian, you retreat and heal your injuries first. After this emperor kills this madman, I'll come and heal you." After saying that, a golden light flashed in his right hand and a golden dragon-shaped sword appeared. He held the sword in his left hand and the golden sword in his right hand. He looked at Ji Tianqing with murderous intent. Empress Tantai took 2 steps back and looked at the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor with a sneer. Her eyes were full of contempt and ridicule. The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor glared at Ji Tianqing and shouted, "Brat, who are you? Why did you sneak into the palace and assassinate this emperor's empress?" Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly and said disdainfully, "Qi Yang, it seems like you've been bewitched by Tantai Xian Er. You've lost your mind and become obsessed with her." "Ha! The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor was stunned and asked subconsciously, "Who is Tantai Xian Er?" Ji Tianqing pointed at Empress Tantai behind him and said in a dignified tone, "Her real name is Tantai Xian Er. Her real identity is the Empress of the Cha Nu tribe. This Emperor's Empress." The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor glanced at Empress Tantai and then looked at Ji Tianqing in confusion. Cha Nu tribe? Empress? Brat, what nonsense are you talking about? Everyone in this country knows that this is this Emperor's Empress, the devastatingly beautiful Princess Lin Xian Er. Ha ha ha. Ji Tianqing sneered disdainfully and shook his head. "Scarlet Sun, it seems that not only do you not know about the Cha Nu tribe, but you are also kept in the dark by her. The Cha Nu tribe's reputation is known by all the veteran experts in the continent. Tantai Xian Er, as the Empress of the Cha Nu tribe, is a demoness who can bring disaster to a country. If this Emperor knew that you are so stupid, this Emperor would not have come to the Scarlet Sun Empire to help, let alone care about your life and death." The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor was completely dumbfounded and his face and eyes were filled with confusion. He turned his head to look at Empress Tantai, who was smiling coldly, and then looked at Ji Tianqing, who was wearing a cold expression. After a long silence, his anger dissipated and he looked at Empress Tantai in confusion and asked, "Lin Xian Er, is what he said true? This Emperor believes you, he must be slandering you, right?" Empress Tantai ignored him and looked at Ji Tianqing with scorching eyes and sneered, "Did you see that? You abandon me like a worn-out shoe, but someone else treats me like a treasure. Even if he knew that he was fooled by me, he still loved me for hundreds of years and obeyed me." Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "Only this kind of brainless worm would be captivated by you." No matter how stupid the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor was, no matter how fooled he was by Empress Tantai, he could still hear the clues at this moment. He stared at Empress Tantai in disbelief and asked in a deep voice, "Lin Xian Er. Could it be that what he said was true? Are you really the Empress of the Cha Nu tribe?" Empress Tantai looked at him contemptuously and sneered, "So what if I am? Didn't you willingly become a subject under my skirt and be ordered around by me? For hundreds of years, you were intoxicated by the pleasure I brought to you. You would rather not make any progress in your cultivation than be absorbed by me. This is all voluntary. Are you going to go back on your words now?" The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor shook his head subconsciously and quickly said, "No, you are this Emperor's Empress. No matter what your past is, this Emperor can let bygones be bygones." Empress Tantai suddenly smiled brightly and pointed at Ji Tianqing, "Then what are you still in a daze for? Why aren't you killing him?" The Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor looked at Ji Tianqing and recalled what he said before. He felt that something was wrong and asked doubtfully, "Your Excellency said that you are here to help the Scarlet Sun Empire in battle. May I ask who your Excellency is?" Ji Tianqing said indifferently, "Ji Tianqing." These three short words were like a bolt from the blue, making the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor feel as if he was struck by lightning. He was stunned on the spot. After a long while, he finally came back to his senses. He stared at Ji Tianqing, dumbfounded, and his expression became extremely complicated. You are actually, the first disciple of Luotian Mountain." Chapter 2136. Ji Tianqing's name and deeds had long spread throughout the Luoshui kingdom. However, the Scarlet Sun Holy Emperor was the same as the commoners. He had only heard of Ji Tianqing's name and had never seen him in person. Therefore, when he found out that the white-robed young man in front of him was the famous Ji Tianqing, his state of mind was in a mess. How can this be? How can this be? How can you be Ji Tianqing? Holy Emperor Qiang murmured in despair. He was at a loss and did not know what to do. Ji Tianqing was the #1 god's disciple in the Luoshui kingdom. He was the most valued person by the Divine Master and also the #1 genius in the continent. Most importantly, he had killed 2 great demon sages and annihilated millions of demon soldiers. In the northern battlefield, he was invincible and undefeatable. In just 3 months, he had helped the White Frost Empire and Qianlong Empire out of the siege and defeated millions of demon soldiers. The Qiang Empire had been waiting for him for a long time, and finally, he was here. Soon, the Qiang Empire would be saved and the demon soldiers would be defeated. Holy Emperor Qiang had thought more than once about how to arrange a ceremony to welcome their savior, Ji Tianqing, with the most enthusiastic and grand ceremony. However, he did not expect that his first meeting with Ji Tianqing would be under such circumstances. This was too king embarrassing. Was there a more ridiculous situation than this? For a moment, Saint Emperor Scarlet's son fell into a dilemma. Empress Tantai had already expected his reaction and sneered contemptuously. He. Qiang, you have really insulted your name. You are so wishy-washy like a woman. What's wrong? Have you been squatting under my skirt for too long and can't straighten your back? Have you forgotten what you said just now? Are you going to break your promise in front of everyone? You untrustworthy, lustful, cowardly coward. Empress Tantai scolded Holy Emperor Qiang without any scruples. This made the tens of thousands of imperial guards feel embarrassed. Only then did everyone understand that the handsome and valiant white-robed youth was the legendary Marshal Ji. Filled with shame, they hurriedly put away their swords and weapons and quietly retreated to a distance. The situation now was really like a fight between gods. As mortals, they were not qualified to intervene. Holy Emperor Qiang hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth and making up his mind. He bowed to Ji Tianqing and said respectfully, "General Ji, I have heard of your name for a long time. I have been looking for an opportunity to thank you face to face. It's a pity that the situation at the border is tense and I haven't had the time to pay you a visit. This is my negligence and I hope you can forgive me. When I came here just now, I didn't recognize your face and I was worried about my wife's safety. That's why I misunderstood and spoke rudely to you. I didn't mean to offend you, and I apologize to you with my humble servant. I hope that you can be magnanimous and forgive me." After saying that, he gave Empress Tantai a meaningful glance, wanting to drag her along to apologize to Ji Tianqing. Unfortunately, Emperor Qiang's SSS eyes. "Qiang, I have overestimated you. I didn't expect you to be so cowardly. You only know that he is Ji Tianqing and you are so humble to him. You even want me to apologize to him. Ha ha ha. What a joke. If you knew his other identity, you would probably kneel down and wipe his shoes, right?" Emperor Qiang Empire laughed crazily. Her words were merciless and humiliated Holy Emperor Qiang. No matter how much Holy Emperor Qiang doted on her and tolerated her, he could not accept such humiliation. Moreover, it was in front of tens of thousands of imperial guards and citizens. "Shut up." Holy Emperor Qiang Empire was enraged. He glared at Emperor Qiang Empire and shouted, "Lin Xian'er, don't you think you have caused enough trouble for me? I order you to apologize to young Master Ji immediately." How could Emperor Qiang Empire submit? She had completely given up. She looked at Holy Emperor Qiang Empire with resentment and sneered, "Ha ha ha, Ji Tianqing wanted to kill me and now you want me to apologize to him? Qiang, you are just afraid of his power and status. You are afraid of offending the Divine Lord and losing your position as Holy Emperor. You said that you are infatuated with me and are willing to do anything for me. How laughable that I actually believed you. In fact, you are the same as all the other men in the world. You are all selfish bastards. Compared to Ji Tianqing, you are filthy and despicable and contemptible. Compared to Kenshin, you are more like a maggot in a smelly ditch, disgusting. I was really blind. Why did I marry you back then? I even slept with you for hundreds of years. Ha ha ha. I was so stupid. I was so blind." Emperor Qiang Empire opened her arms and looked up at the sky. Her voice was hoarse as she screamed crazily. Her whole body twitched in pain. After closing her eyes, 2 lines of blood flowed out from the corners of her eyes. Ji Tianqing looked at all this indifferently. There was no longer any ripples in his heart. Although this matter was already lamentable, he had already given up. He was no longer willing to sympathize with her. Holy Emperor Qiang Empire was originally infatuated. Even if he knew that Empress Tantai was the empress of the Cha Nu tribe, he would not mind. He wanted to keep his position as Holy Emperor but did not want to give up on Empress Tantai. That was why he persuaded Empress Tantai to apologize to Ji Tianqing. But he never thought that things would develop to this point. Empress Tantai said such vicious words in her grief and indignation. But they were all from the bottom of her heart. Only then did he understand that in Empress Tantai's heart, he was so filthy, inferior, and despicable. I am the dignified Holy Emperor Qiang Empire, but she humiliated me in front of the people of the imperial city. It's all because I was too soft-hearted and too arrogant to her. I actually let her become so crazy. If I don't kill her today, I will lose all my face and become the laughing stock of the empire. How can I rule the empire in the future? What's more, Ji Tianqing was there. If I don't deal with it properly, I will offend him. Holy Emperor Qiang Empire was angry and humiliated. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. His eyes were stained with a layer of blood. He cupped his fist at Ji Tianqing and said in a sonorous tone, "I've made a fool of myself in front of you. I was fooled by this demoness and almost became a fatuous ruler. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing came out today and exposed the true face of this demoness. Only then did I wake up. Let me deal with my family affairs first and kill this demoness. Then I will thank Ji Tianqing." After that, he held the golden sword with both hands and unleashed all his power. He slashed at Empress Tantai. Swoosh! The golden light formed a giant sword that was thousands of feet long. It carried the power to split heaven and earth and fell on Empress Tantai's head. Holy Emperor Qiang Empire's strength was weaker than Empress Tantai. But Empress Tantai was seriously injured and was at the end of her rope. Chapter 2137. Empress Tantai's figure was drowned by the sword light. In the next moment, she was going to be killed by Saint Emperor Qiang on the spot. At this moment, Ji Tianqing suddenly shouted coldly, "Stop!" By the time his voice sounded, Saint Emperor Qiang's sword had already reached Empress Tantai's head. How could he stop it? Whoosh! Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and teleported to Empress Tantai's side. His right hand lit up with a dazzling golden light as he grabbed at the top of her head. Boom! A huge golden hand instantly grabbed the giant sword that was thousands of feet long, and there was a muffled sound. The giant sword, which was originally incomparably violent, suddenly stopped after it was caught by the giant golden palm. It did not move an inch. Saint Emperor Qiang was stunned. His eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at Ji Tianqing in horror. He never thought that Ji Tianqing would actually stop him from killing Tantai Xian. Moreover, he did not expect Ji Tianqing to be able to block his all-out attack with just one hand. This was simply too terrifying. At this moment, he finally understood what level Ji Tianqing's strength had reached. The tens of thousands of imperial guards and the citizens of the imperial city in the distance were all dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with astonishment. In the past, everyone had only heard that Marshal Ji was invincible and his strength was unfathomable. But that was just a legend. No one had seen it with their own eyes. Today, they finally saw it with their own eyes. It was indeed terrifying. At this moment, Ji Tianqing's right hand gradually closed, and the golden hand also clenched tightly. Kacha, sounds of shattering were heard. The 3,000-meter-long giant sword was shattered on the spot. Saint Emperor Qiang withdrew his sword with a complicated expression. He looked at Ji Tianqing in confusion and asked, Marshal Ji. You are. Ji Tianqing glanced at him calmly and said indifferently, forget it. She has lost her mind. She is also a pitiful person. Let her go. Tantai Xian was also stunned. She looked at Ji Tianqing's side face with a complicated expression. After a long while, she came back to her senses and sneered with a bitter expression, I don't need your sympathy. Ji Tianqing didn't reply. He looked at her calmly and said, Tantai Xian, leave and never come back. Find a place to live in seclusion and focus on pursuing the peak of martial arts. Empress Tantai looked at him deeply and said in a low voice, Kenshin, today's matter, I will remember it. Let's meet again in the martial world. With that, she turned around and flew into the sky, turning into a ray of golden light and disappearing into the horizon. On the ruins of the imperial palace, nearly 10,000 people looked up at the sky and discussed with complicated expressions. After a long time, the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor regained his composure and spoke in a dignified tone. The queen of the Cha Nu race, Tantai Xian impersonated the princess of the flower race, Lin Xian and infiltrated the imperial court. For nearly 300 years, this emperor has been bewitched by Tantai Xian but I still followed my heart and didn't cause a disaster. Fortunately, young Master Ji Tianqing came today and saw through the demonic woman's identity. Only then did he save this emperor and prevent this emperor's reputation from being damaged. And because of young Master Ji's benevolence, I spared the witch's life and this matter is over. From now on, no one is allowed to talk about this matter. Otherwise, they will be punished severely. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor's voice was like rolling thunder, spreading across half of the imperial city. Countless imperial guards and commoners heard this and hurriedly bowed to show that they had obeyed. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor ordered with a dignified expression, all imperial guards, listen to my order. Immediately rescue the injured and repair the palace and houses. Tens of thousands of imperial guards accepted the order and quickly scattered to carry out the task. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor flew to Ji Tianqing and bowed to him with a smile, General Ji, thank you very much for today's matter. This emperor will order the Internal Affairs Department to arrange a banquet and let this emperor entertain you well to express my gratitude. General Ji, please follow this emperor to the guest hall. Let's rest first. Ji Tianqing did not have a good impression of the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor. He glanced at him expressionlessly and said indifferently, no need. I am busy with military affairs and have to rush back to the Starfall Valley. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor frowned slightly and tried to persuade him a few more times. But Ji Tianqing insisted and did not want to stay. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor could only give up and personally send him out of the imperial city. Along the way, he tried to find something to talk about and asked Ji Tianqing, General Ji, this emperor heard that you are in the Starfall Valley. Why did you come to the imperial city? Of course, Ji Tianqing could not tell him the truth. So, he made up a lie. This emperor came to the Scarlet Sun Empire not only for the war, but also to investigate the queen of the Cha Nu tribe. I see. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor nodded to show that he understood. He was secretly alarmed, oh no. Ji Tianqing came with bad intentions. He must have been ordered by the Divine Master. Could it be that the Divine Master already knew that this Emperor's Empress is the queen of the Cha Nu tribe? If that's the case, wouldn't this Emperor's image in the Divine Master's heart be greatly reduced? Wouldn't I become a useless and lecherous ruler? The moment he thought of this, the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor's heart was filled with worry. When Ji Tianqing saw the strange expression on his face, he asked, oh right, Scarlet Sun, aren't you in the Heavenly Wolf Pass? Why did you come back to the Imperial City? The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor was stunned and thought to himself, damn it, this Emperor already guessed that he would ask this question. But how can this Emperor tell him that this Emperor is looking for Lin Xian? It's just a coincidence that this Emperor encountered this matter. He quickly came up with an idea and lied, this emperor has already arranged the military affairs in the Heavenly Wolf Pass and has to return to the imperial palace to deal with the government affairs. I didn't expect to encounter this matter. Ji Tianqing looked at him with a smile that was not a smile and said, Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor is really busy. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor hurriedly waved his hands and said humbly, Young Master Ji is too kind. As the ruler of a country, this emperor naturally has to work hard for the millions of citizens. This is this emperor's responsibility. Ji Tianqing didn't believe this nonsense at all and said calmly, All right, you can send me off here. I will take my leave now. If there's anything important, I will contact you again. In other words, if there wasn't anything important, don't bother me. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor also heard the signs and asked anxiously, Marshal Ji, please wait. May I ask if Marshal Ji will come to the Heavenly Wolf Pass to assist this emperor after the crisis in the Starfall Valley is resolved? Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and waved his hand, maybe there isn't a need. When the time comes, just wait for my message. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor frowned and mumbled, What do you mean? Ji Tianqing didn't explain and cupped his hands to the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor before flying away. The Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor stood in the air and looked at Jiang Yi's departing figure with a complicated expression. Only when Ji Tianqing's figure disappeared into the horizon did the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor heave a sigh of relief. He muttered to himself, Damn it! Is this fellow a jinx? Chapter 2138. When Ji Tianqing returned to Meteor Fall Valley, it was already evening. At this time, the 6 generals had long brought an army of over 500,000 and returned in triumph. Inside Meteor Fall Valley, the atmosphere was jubilant. Before Ji Tianqing set off for battle, no one knew where he was going to attack. Only now did everyone know that he brought an army of 600,000 to attack Fish Dragon Mountain's main camp. The most inconceivable thing was that he actually succeeded. Not only did he destroy Fish Dragon Mountain's main camp, he even killed over 1 million fiends and even killed Commander-in-Chief Zhang Yu. This was absolutely a great piece of news, a great victory that raised everyone's spirits. Everyone understood that the destruction of Fish Dragon Mountain's main camp would definitely cause a tremendous blow to the Fiend Army's morale. Fiend Sage Zhang Yu being killed also made the Fiend Army leaderless and would definitely fall into panic. The Crimson Sun Empire was not far from victory. Before long, the Empire's army would be able to expel several million fiends and return home. That night, a grand celebratory banquet was held inside Meteor Fall Valley. Bonfires burned brightly everywhere, the fragrance of wine overflowing everywhere. The soldiers sang and danced, drinking to their heart's content all night. Especially those 6 generals who took part in the battle, they became the entire Meteor Fall Valley's focal point, receiving the reverence and envy of the million soldiers. But those 6 generals did not dare to claim credit. They all appeared very humble, pushing all of the credit to Ji Tianqing. No matter what occasion, they all spoke bluntly. The greatest contributor to this great victory was Commander-in-Chief Ji Tianqing. Without Marshal Ji's leadership, they absolutely could not have won, let alone create such glorious battle results. The soldiers were jubilant, but Ji Tianqing did not show up. He stayed alone in his residence in the Commander-in-Chief Palace, meditating and cultivating in a secret chamber. Whatever celebratory banquet, award ceremony, he was not interested in it. What he was thinking about was not just Meteor Fall Valley in the Crimson Sun Empire, it even included half the continent. The ancestral fiend god had the intention of withdrawing long ago. Now that Zhang Yu is dead, the fiend army in the northern border is constantly decreasing. I reckon that they will withdraw soon. After the fiend race's chaos is resolved, I have to make a trip back to Luotian Mountain first and report to Granny Long. In addition, I have to take a look at Yao Yao's cultivation situation, and the 2 children. He wondered if Yao Yao had refined the God Orb, and what realm had she reached. Now that the matters of the Luotian Mountain are settled, I will return to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Now that I have returned to the martial sage realm, I can finally stand at the top of the mainland and rebuild the pillar of heaven's mountains. After making up his mind, he focused on cultivating and consolidating his martial arts foundation. Unknowingly, a day and night had passed. It was the night of the second day. The grand celebration banquet had long since ended, and the Starfall Valley had also regained its tranquility. Ji Tianqing was cultivating in the secret chamber when the voice of a young man suddenly rang out from outside the door. Reporting to Marshal Ji, Marshal Du just sent a message to invite you to the conference hall to discuss important military matters. When Ji Tianqing heard this, he ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. Outside the secret room stood a young man in armor, dressed like a guard. Ji Tianqing sized him up and asked, "Who are you?" The young man hurriedly bowed and answered truthfully, reporting to Marshal Ji, "This subordinate is a bodyguard sent by Marshal Du to serve you." Ji Tianqing frowned and asked again, "Where is Guanji?" The young guard hesitated for a moment before explaining with a difficult expression, reporting to Marshal Ji, "This subordinate does not know where Miss Guanji went. However, this subordinate heard that after you led the army to battle, Miss Guanji disappeared." Hearing him say this, Ji Tianqing understood what was going on and thought to himself, "Guanji must have followed Tantai Xian Heir's orders to deliberately approach me to gather information. When I led the army to battle, her mission was completed and she most likely went to find Tantai Xian Heir." He threw this matter to the back of his mind and strode through the corridor, heading towards the conference hall in the front hall. After 100 breaths of time, he stepped into the conference hall. The conference hall was brightly lit and there were more than 20 generals waiting in two groups. Marshal Du Qingchang stood near the sand table and stared at it, lost in thought. Seeing Ji Tianqing enter the conference hall, all the generals saluted and said respectfully, "This general greets Marshal Ji." Du Qingchang also cupped his fists and greeted him with a smile. "Marshal Ji, you've finally come. Everyone has been waiting for you." Ji Tianqing glanced at him and asked calmly, "What is it?" Du Qingchang did not beat around the bush and said bluntly, "Marshal Ji, you led an army of 600,000 and smoothly flattened the Fish Dragon Mountain camp and killed demon sage Zhangyu. This great victory has raised our army's morale and our fighting spirit. On the other hand, the demon race army must be in a panic and at a loss. This is the best opportunity for us to pursue them. We should set out as soon as possible and take down the other two camps in one fell swoop. After annihilating the demon race army outside Falling Star Valley, we can rush to Heavenly Wolf Pass's aid." Du Qingchang was excited, his face flushed red and his bright eyes filled with expectation. The 20-some generals in the conference hall also echoed his words. "That's right, Marshal Du's words are reasonable. Marshal Ji, you can't hesitate. We must pursue them while they're victorious. Marshal Ji commands troops like a god. How can you not understand these principles? Everyone, don't worry. Marshal Ji will definitely lead the charge and utterly defeat the demon race army." Ji Tianqing saw that everyone was eager for battle and did not stop them. He nodded and said, "Since you all want to set out, then prepare the army for battle. In any case, the demon race army will be retreating soon. If you don't attack now, you won't have the chance to perform any meritorious service." Hearing this, all the generals were taken aback for a moment, all of them revealing looks of confusion. "What? The demon race army will be retreating soon? Marshal Ji, where did you get this news? Is it reliable? If that's really the case, then that's great. The demon race army is finally retreating. The soldiers can finally return to their homes. If the demon race army retreats, that's naturally for the best. The soldiers under this seat's command won't have to fight bloody battles and get injured or die." Obviously, not everyone was bloodthirsty and warlike. The reason why they led the army to battle was to protect their home and defend their country. They were forced to resist. Thus, the 20-some generals were immediately divided into two factions. One faction advocated setting out and only wanted to kill the demon race army, perform meritorious service, and make a name for themselves. The other faction advocated defending Starfall Valley and waiting for the demon race army to retreat so that they could return to their homes. Seeing this scene, Du Qingchang couldn't help but frown. He looked at Ji Tianqing with a solemn expression. Marshal Ji, is what you said just now true? Is the demon race army really going to retreat? Ji Tianqing said with an indifferent expression, that's natural. However, we must put pressure on the demon race to urge them to retreat as soon as possible. Ben Shuai will personally lead the army into battle. Generals who want to perform meritorious service can take the initiative to apply. Chapter 2139. Ji Tianqing's decision was undoubtedly the best choice. The 20 or so generals all showed relieved smiles. The generals who were willing to participate in the war enthusiastically reported their names, intending to follow Ji Tianqing into battle. The generals who were not willing to fight stayed in Fallen Star Valley and waited for the war to end before returning home. After a while, this matter was settled. 12 generals were willing to go into battle, while the other 14 chose to stay in Fallen Star Valley. Ji Tianqing ordered the 12 generals to go back and prepare, waiting for his orders at any time. The other 14 generals also took their leave one after another. Only Ji Tianqing and Du Qingchang were left in the Great Hall. Du Qingchang said with a smile, Marshal Ji really is a natural-born war god. Your grasp of the situation and the morale of the army is exquisite. He cupped his fists and bowed to Ji Tianqing, sincerely flattering him. Ji Tianqing did not appreciate it and looked at him indifferently, asking in a deep voice, Du Qingchang, you deliberately arranged for Guanji to stay by Ben Shuai's side, didn't you? Du Qingchang's face suddenly stiffened and he put on a slightly embarrassed smile. Marshal Ji, what do you mean? Did Guanji offend you? Or did Guanji's sudden disappearance make you unhappy? Ji Tianqing frowned and said with a dignified expression, a straightforward person does not speak insinuations. You should know what happened in Qiyang Imperial City. Du Qingchang quickly put on a smiling face and showed an expression of sudden realization, oh, so you are unhappy because of this. A few days ago, this old man and the imperial family knew that Marshal Ji was coming to help. This old man was busy preparing the welcoming ceremony when Miss Guanji came to Fallen Star Valley and brought a letter from Her Majesty the Empress. Her Majesty the Empress ordered that Marshal Ji come from afar to help resolve the crisis of the demon race. He is a great guest. Miss Guanji is her personal maid and is the most trusted one. She is also the best at serving people. Therefore, Her Majesty the Empress wants Miss Guanji to serve you personally and not neglect you. How could this old man dare to disobey Her Majesty the Empress? Naturally, I'll do as you say. Speaking up to this point, Du Qingchang stroked his white beard and sighed with compassion, who would have thought that the gentle and virtuous celestial empress would actually be a demoness that could bring disaster to the country and its people. This old man also didn't expect Ji Shuai to personally head to the imperial city and expose celestial empress' true colors. Now that he thought about it, that Lady Guanji most likely also had a problem. This old man was momentarily confused and did not investigate Guanji's identity. However, this old man knew nothing about this. Please forgive me, Marshal Ji. What Du Qingchang said was reasonable, and he pushed the responsibility away, making Ji Tianqing speechless. However, Ji Tianqing always felt that Du Qingchang was too cunning and might not be clean. He stared deeply at Du Qingchang and asked in a deep voice, Du Qingchang, you are not a general of the Qiyang Empire, but a martial arts master from the underworld. Ben Shuai will only ask you one thing, are you loyal to Tantai Xian Heir or Qiyang Holy Emperor? Du Qingchang also frowned and smiled bitterly, Marshal Ji's words are difficult to understand. The master of Qiyang Empire is His Majesty the Holy Emperor, and this old man is a citizen of Qiyang Empire, so of course I am loyal to His Majesty. Ji Tianqing glanced at him and said indifferently, "This matter is over, you take care of yourself. Early tomorrow morning, Ben Shui will lead the army to battle. You guard Falling Star Valley well." Du Qingchang cupped his hands with a smile and said confidently, "Please rest assured, Marshal Ji. With this old man overseeing Falling Star Valley, nothing will go wrong." Early the next morning, Ji Tianqing gathered 500,000 soldiers and set out to attack a demon race fortress. The fortress had more than 600,000 soldiers stationed there. The terrain was steep and there were many defensive spirit arrays arranged around it, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. Moreover, the fortress stored a large number of cultivation resources and war preparations. After Ji Tianqing led the army to the fortress, he did not need any planning or strategy. He just charged straight in. In any case, he took the lead and no one could stop him. Regardless of whether it was the layers of defensive spirit arrays or the tens of thousands of demon race guards, they were all like paper in front of him. All the obstacles blocking his advance were easily swept away by him. With the 500,000 soldiers following him, he only needed to clean up the mess. It could be said that it was very easy. This battle only lasted for 4 hours before it was declared over. More than 90% of the 600,000 demon race soldiers were wiped out. Only 10,000 managed to escape. The human soldiers destroyed the fortress and seized a large number of war preparations. Unfortunately, most of the cultivation resources were for the demon race's use. The human race could not use them. Ji Tianqing ordered the soldiers to destroy those resources on the spot. After this battle ended, the army returned to Falling Star Valley to rest and reorganize. However, Ji Tianqing did not rest. He led 700,000 soldiers and attacked another demon race camp that night. In any case, there were 12 generals following him. There were 1,200,000 soldiers at his disposal. That night, the night sky in the north of Falling Star Valley was brightly lit all night, surrounded by soaring flames. The commotion of the great battle spread thousands of miles away. The starlight, heavenly wind, and astral fire that fell from the sky could be clearly seen even 10,000 miles away. After daybreak, the human soldiers returned in triumph. Of the 700,000 soldiers, there were still 600,000 left. 100,000 soldiers had died on the battlefield. But the demon race camp was trampled flat. The million demon race army was turned to ashes, vanishing into thin air. After 2 consecutive battles, the soldiers under Ji Tianqing's command were already physically and mentally exhausted. They had to rest for a few days. And the demon race army outside Falling Star Valley only had a few 100,000 people left. They were trapped in a camp. Those remaining demon race had already completely lost their fighting spirit. They were in a constant state of panic, waiting for death to descend. Whatever army morale, it all collapsed and disintegrated. Ji Tianqing had been meditating in the Valley of Fallen Stars for 3 days. On the morning of the 4th day, he led an army of 500,000 and set off again. This time, he was going to take down the last demon race camp and resolve the danger of Falling Star Valley. However, when he led the army to arrive outside that demon race camp, he discovered that the camp was silent and deserted. He personally entered the demon race camp and discovered that the camp was already deserted. It was like a dead city. The several 100,000 demon race army had already evacuated long ago. The cultivation resources and military supplies in the camp were also all taken away. Only the houses and palaces, as well as the underground demon's den, and the continuously operating grand array were left. Regarding this result, Ji Tianqing was not surprised. He ordered the destruction of the entire camp, then led the troops back to Falling Star Valley. After returning to Falling Star Valley, he sent a message to Holy Emperor Crimson Sun, reporting the situation in Falling Star Valley. Not long after the communication jade slip was sent out, a spiritual light flew over from the horizon and landed in Ji Tianqing's palm. After the spiritual light dissipated, a communication jade slip shockingly appeared. Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment. Frowning, he muttered, "Holy Emperor Crimson Sun replied so quickly. It can't be so fast. It shouldn't be him." Finished talking, his divine sense invaded the jade slip and read the information inside. Chapter 2140. This communication jade slip was indeed not sent by the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor. It was an urgent message sent by Granny Long from the Luotian mountain. There was not much information in the jade slip, only a few short sentences. However, to Ji Tianqing, this was incomparably important news. "Tianqing, I already know about your deeds in the northern battlefield. I am deeply gratified and proud. Now that the situation is settled, the war will be over. After you have settled the matters of the Scarlet Sun Empire, return to the Luotian mountain as soon as possible. I heard that the Heaven End Divine Nation will hold the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly that is held once every 50 years. In this assembly, a divine pearl containing wind and fire appeared. It is most likely related to Yunyao." The information in the jade slip ended here. The first few sentences were all about the war in the north. It was not important. The last two sentences were what Ji Tianqing was most concerned about. The Divine Martial Sacred Assembly that is held once every 50 years. A divine pearl containing wind and fire. I clearly remember that the Heaven End Divine Nation did not hold such an assembly 1,000 years ago. And that divine pearl containing wind and fire, could it really be related to Yao Yao? This matter was extremely important. He quickly took out the communication jade slip and sent a message to Granny Long, asking about the details. After about a quarter of an hour, Granny Long sent a message back. This time, she explained the matter in detail. The so-called Divine Martial Sacred Assembly is a martial arts assembly that was first held by the Heaven End Divine Nation 1,000 years ago. It is held once every 50 years. So far, the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly has been held 20 times, this year is the 21st. The purpose of the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly is to allow the young martial saints of the continent to gather together and exchange their experiences. Most importantly, everyone can discuss and research together on how to reach the martial god realm and ascend to the upper world. Any martial saint expert, who is under 1,000 years old, regardless of race or force, can participate in the assembly. Other than exchanges and discussions, there are also competitions. The young martial saints who can be ranked in the top 10 will gain both fame and fortune, and become famous in the continent. Every Shenwu Sacred Assembly's rewards were extremely generous, so it attracted many young martial saints. After 1,000 years, the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly had become the most powerful and eye-catching martial arts assembly in the continent. According to the reports of the spies in the Heaven End Divine Nation, the rewards of this Divine Martial Sacred Assembly were much more generous and mysterious than the previous ones. Not only were there a few peerless sacred artifacts and magic treasures, but there were also ancient sacred arts manuals. The most mysterious one was the pearl that was taken from the 9 heavens and contained wind and fire. According to the information reported by the spies, I have determined that the pearl is not simple. It is very likely to be the divine pearl that Yunyao needs. Tianqing, quickly settle the matters of the Scarlet Sun Empire and return to the Luotian mountain. This old woman will speak with you face to face. The information in the jade strip was very long, but Ji Tianqing patiently read through it. He put away the communication jade slip and pondered with a solemn expression, "I see. 1,000 years ago, after I fell, the Heaven End God Nation held this sacred assembly. Not only could it allow martial sages to gather together to discuss the path to becoming a deity and ascension, but it also offered generous rewards. It was no wonder that it was so popular. Now that the wind and fire pearls have appeared, it doesn't matter if it's the god pearl that Yao Yao needs, I have to go there personally. Every divine pearl is related to Yao Yao's life and martial arts future. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, I will not give up." Ji Tianqing made up his mind. He decided to settle the matters of the Scarlet Sun Empire first and then return to the Luotian mountain. Not long after, another spiritual light flew from the sky and landed in his palm. Swoosh! After the spiritual light faded, a communication jade slip appeared. Ji Tianqing used his divine sense to scan the jade slip and read the message inside. This jade slip was sent by the Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor. Young Master Ji, this emperor has received the message you sent. This morning, the generals under this emperor's command also came to report that the 2 barracks outside the Heavenly Wolf Mountain Pass were also empty. This emperor personally went to the other barracks and strongholds to check on the situation and found that the 4 million demon army had all disappeared. In the depths of the mountains, this emperor captured a small team of demons who were holding the rear. After torture, I found out the truth. As it turns out, the leader of the demons in the North Underworld Mountain issued an order 3 days ago for all the demons to withdraw from the battlefield and return to the North Underworld Mountain as soon as possible. Young Master Ji, this is great news. The demons have finally admitted defeat and retreated. After reading the message in the jade slip, Ji Tianqing silently put away the jade slip and pondered expressionlessly. The voice of the burial of heaven resounded in his mind. The demon army has finally retreated. This war that lasted 3 years has finally ended. Your mission has been completed and you have become a great hero of the Luotian divine nation. Why are you not happy at all? Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile. He said coldly, as long as the ancestor fiend god is not dead, I will not be happy. The retreat of the demon army is inevitable. With the current strength of the North Underworld Mountain, it is impossible for them to win against the Luotian divine nation. I think that since we all know that the North Underworld Mountain will lose, the ancestor fiend god must be very clear about this as well. But why did he still insist on starting the war? The burial of heaven was silent for a moment before replying. You mean to say that the ancestor fiend god starting the war and ordering the demon army to retreat today were all part of his plan? You suspect that this was all part of the ancestor fiend god's scheme from the beginning? Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a low voice, that's right. With the ancestor fiend god's nature, he is the coldest and most ruthless fiend god. He is the most selfish. Even if the demons in the North Underworld Mountain are his descendants, he will not have the slightest bit of mercy. What he wants is to sacrifice everyone and use all possible means to help him recover his strength in the shortest time possible. Once he recovers to his peak state, he will become the death god that can move unhindered through the galaxy. Then, he can easily enslave the entire world. At that time, he will not be afraid of any gods, nor will he need any citizens or descendants. The burial of heaven thought for a moment and immediately understood what he meant. I understand now. You mean to say that from the beginning, the ancestor fiend god never thought of winning against the Luotian divine nation. What it needed was only war and slaughter. The demon army in the North Underworld Mountain massacred the citizens of the Luotian divine nation and collected an endless amount of blood, qi, and souls to fill the blood sea abyss for the ancestor fiend god. Because of this, the ancestor fiend god was able to recover to the peak of the martial saint realm in just a few years. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a cold voice, that's right. The defeat of the demon army is inevitable. But I am more worried that the ancestor fiend god gave the order to retreat because he has already achieved his goal. If that is the case, he will recover to the deity realm soon. The burial of heaven was also full of worry and said in a low voice, if the ancestor fiend god recovers to the deity realm, I am afraid that even the 3 martial gods will not be his match. Before you recover to the deity realm, no one will be able to deal with him. When that happens, he will not need to send out millions of demons. Chapter 2141. Ji Tianqing and Burial of Heaven knew how terrifying the ancestor demon god was. Although 30,000 years had passed since the great war of the gods in the Antiquity Age, there were still many legends about it. Through the legends, Ji Tianqing could roughly estimate the ancestor demon god's peak strength. The ancestor demon god's peak strength was comparable to mine. We were both deity kings. I have been reborn for close to 30 years and have just broken through to the martial sage realm. In less than 10 years, it has recovered to the peak of the martial sage realm. Comparisons are odious. Ji Tianqing lamented in a complicated tone as a cold light flashed in his eyes. Burial of Heaven quickly consoled him. Actually, it has only been 10 years since you awakened. Moreover, the ancestor demon god is an ancient demon god. It constantly caused wars, and wherever it went, it would cause a shocking massacre. It can use the blood, chi and souls of billions of living beings to recover its strength quickly. This is the demonic path. You are on the right path and rely on your own cultivation to recover your strength. Of course, you can't compare to it. Ji Tianqing nodded and said earnestly, although that is the case, I still feel that time is too tight. I am worried that after a year and a half, I will still be in the martial sage realm while the ancestor demon god will have recovered to the god realm. Burial of Heaven said firmly, you don't have to worry. No matter how powerful the ancestor demon god is, it can't be that fast. Just by devouring the blood, chi and souls of billions of living beings, he wants to recover to the god realm. Is it so easy to reach the god realm? I hope so. Ji Tianqing nodded and said no more. At that moment, the young guard's voice sounded from outside the secret chamber. Reporting to Marshal Ji, Marshal Du has sent someone to invite you to the conference hall to discuss important matters. Hearing the young guard's voice, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and muttered to himself, it seems that Du Qingchang should know about the demon race's withdrawal. That's good. I will go and see him now and bid farewell to everyone. With that, he got up and walked out of the secret chamber. Seeing him come out, the young guard hurriedly bowed respectfully and followed him to the conference hall. By the time Ji Tianqing arrived at the meeting hall, Du Qingchang and more than 20 generals were already waiting for him in the hall. Everyone's faces were filled with joy and excitement as they discussed noisily. Obviously, everyone had already heard the news of the devil race's retreat. Seeing Ji Tianqing's arrival, Du Qingchang hurriedly raised his hand to signal for everyone to be quiet. He said in a dignified tone, General Ji is here. Everyone, be quiet. The generals immediately stopped their discussion and quieted down. Everyone's eyes fell on Ji Tianqing as they bowed in unison. Greetings, Marshal Ji. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly, indicating that everyone was excused. He looked at Du Qingchang and asked, Marshal Du, did you invite me here for some good news? Du Qingchang nodded quickly and said with a smile, of course. This was great news. Marshal Ji's prediction was indeed like a god. The devil race army really retreated. Not only did the devil monarch outside Fallen Star Valley retreat, even the several million devil race army outside Heavenly Wolf Pass also disappeared without a trace. This war that lasted for 3 years, we finally won. Those hateful devil race bastards had no choice but to admit defeat and retreat. Following his words, the other generals also echoed his words. Marshal Ji is really a god in commanding troops. He can foresee the future. Previously, Marshal Ji said that the devil race would retreat. The devil generals didn't believe it. Didn't expect that it really came true. The devil race remnants must have been scared out of their wits by Marshal Ji's awe-inspiring reputation. They knew that staying behind was a dead end, so they fled with their tails between their legs. This hard-won victory was not only exchanged with the lives of our tens of millions of soldiers, but it was also single-handedly created by Marshal Ji. This general suggests that we must hold a celebratory feast in Fallen Star Valley to celebrate the victory of this war. All of us should toast Marshal Ji 3 times. Good. This suggestion is good. We all agree. Marshal Ji, please don't decline. All the generals were in an extremely good mood. All of them were in high spirits and immediately began to talk about preparing for the celebratory feast. Ji Tianqing pressed down with both hands, indicating for everyone to quiet down. He cupped his hands towards Du Qingchang and the generals and said in a calm tone, "Marshal Du, generals, this seat thanks everyone for their assistance and help during this period of time in Fallen Star Valley. Now that the Devil Race army has retreated, the war is over. Everyone can enjoy peace and quiet. It's a pity that this seat still has important matters to attend to. I have to rush back to Luotian Mountain as soon as possible and cannot participate in everyone's celebratory feast." Hearing his words, all the generals revealed expressions of regret and pity. They all opened their mouths to urge him to stay. "Marshal Ji, you have saved our Scarlet Sun Empire. You are the greatest contributor. No matter what, please stay for 2 more days and participate in our celebratory feast. Allow all the soldiers to express their gratitude to you." "That's right, Marshal Ji. All the soldiers in Fallen Star Valley worship you. They all want to see your true appearance." After the generals finished speaking, Du Qingchang also walked to Ji Tianqing's side. He lowered his voice and advised, "Marshal Ji, you are leaving today. Isn't this a little too sudden? Even if you don't want to participate in the celebratory feast, please stay for 2 more days. Just now, Lord Saint Emperor sent a message to invite you to the Imperial City. He wants to personally host a feast for you. Even if you want to leave, you have to give Lord Saint Emperor some time to personally send you off." Ji Tianqing didn't have a good impression of Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor and didn't want to give him any face. Thus, he shook his head indifferently and said, "Marshal Du, this seat indeed has important matters to attend to. I have to rush back to Luotian Mountain as soon as possible to report. As for Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor, this seat won't wait for him. I believe he can understand. The war has just ended and there are many things to settle. The Scarlet Sun Empire also needs to rest and recuperate. He will definitely be busy with work." Ji Tianqing rejected Scarlet Sun Saint Emperor's good intentions. His attitude was very firm as he insisted on leaving. Du Qingchang and the other generals couldn't persuade him. They could only carry a heart full of regret as they respectfully sent him off from the discussion hall. When he reached the plaza outside the hall, Ji Tianqing stopped and cupped his fists to everyone. "Everyone, this seat will be leaving now. Take care of yourselves." After speaking, he turned and flew up into the sky, disappearing into the horizon as fast as lightning. Du Qingchang and the other generals looked up at his departing figure. They shook their heads and whispered to each other. "Sigh, we finally won the war and defeated the Devil Race, but we didn't have the chance to have a drink with Marshal Ji. What kind of person do you think Marshal Ji is? He is powerful, his identity is mysterious, his methods are unfathomable, his military skills are divine, and he can predict the future. This is simply a perfect god. The most unbelievable thing is that Marshal Ji is so outstanding, but he doesn't care about worldly possessions, let alone fame. No matter how much the people of the world respect and worship him, he is indifferent and doesn't have the slightest bit of pride or arrogance." Chapter 2142. 10 days later, Ji Tianqing returned to Luotian Mountain. This was not the first time he came back. But every time he returned to Luotian Mountain, the scene on the mountain was the same. He landed on Luotian Mountain, and the guards outside the main hall quickly greeted him and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, eldest senior brother. Eldest senior brother, you are finally back. Eldest senior brother, Granny Long told us to look for her in the study when you come back." The guards were obviously under Granny Long's orders. Ji Tianqing nodded to express his understanding, and walked through the square to Granny Long's study. Half a quarter of an hour later, he entered the study and saw Granny Long. Granny Long was sitting in front of a desk, handling official business with a solemn expression, and reading some memorials. Ji Tianqing glanced at them. These memorials came from the several empires in the Northern Territory, and most of them were related to the post-war matters. "Granny Long, I am back." He knocked on the door of the study and greeted Granny Long. Granny Long was startled awake, and quickly put down the memorials in her hand, and looked at him with a smile. "Tianxing, our great hero, you are finally back. What are you still standing there for? Quickly sit down and talk." Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded, and sat down opposite her. "Granny Long, you should have heard the news of the demon race's withdrawal, right?" Granny Long quickly nodded, and pointed to the memorials and letters piled up on the desk, and said with a smile, "Of course, look at these memorials and letters, they are all from the Northern Territory. The demon race's army has retreated, and we have finally won the war. Now, the several empires are also in a mess, and the people have returned to their homes, and there are too many things to deal with. This old one is so busy that she almost fainted." Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Thank you for your trouble, Granny." Granny Long quickly waved her hand and said, "This old one cannot accept your words. This old one just stayed in Luotian Mountain to deal with the memorials and letters, how is that tiring? But Tianxing, you went to the battlefield in the Northern Territory alone, personally led the army, and fought in all kinds of battles, who knows how many dangers and crises you experienced. If we're talking about the person who's had it the hardest, it's definitely you." Ji Tianxing gently shook his head and said, "It's not hard. I just need to run around." Seeing him being so humble, Granny Long's smile became even brighter, and her eyes became even more kind. "Now that the Luo Shui God nation has won, the biggest contributor is you. You don't know, but in the past 2 to 3 months, the entire Divine Kingdom citizens have been singing praises of your legendary deeds. God knows how many young martial artists have taken you as an idol to prostrate themselves in worship. There are also countless young girls who see you as the most perfect man and are obsessed with you. I also heard that the people who returned to their homes in the White Frost Empire, Changlong Empire, and Qiyang Empire spontaneously raised funds to build Taoist temples and temples for you. They even cast a golden body for you. The people have agreed that at the end of every month, the people will hold a ceremony to pray for you." Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment, then he waved his hand and said, "That can't be done. Only the martial god who protects a divine nation is qualified to cast a golden body and enjoy incense. I'm only a martial sage now. The people are thinking too highly of me by doing this." Granny Long laughed heartily and shook her head, No, Tianxing, you're too humble. The 3 divine masters can cast a golden body and enjoy incense. Although you're not a divine master, you're an invincible martial god, a great hero who saved millions of people. With such a great contribution and kindness, you're indeed qualified to enjoy the incense offerings of the people." At this point, she suddenly thought of something and smiled. "That's right, there have been rumors in the Divine Kingdom that some time ago, you broke through to the martial sage realm on the battlefield. At that time, the golden light filled the sky and the 9 dragons soaring in the sky lasted for 3 days and 3 nights before dissipating. Not to mention the few empires in the northern region, even the Luotian Mountain could see it. I never thought that you would be so monstrous that you could break through to the martial sage realm in just a few years. Furthermore, when you broke through to the martial sage realm, the heavenly vision was unprecedented." Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows and asked in a low voice, "Granny, you mean that the news of me breaking through to the martial sage realm is already known to everyone?" "Yes." Granny Long nodded her head solemnly and said, "This matter is not only known to everyone in the Luo Shui Divine Kingdom, but it has also spread to the Heaven Extinction Divine Kingdom and the Vast Divine Kingdom. After all, you led the army to the northern region and were invincible, creating miracles and shocking the world. Now, you're a famous hero and the human race's #1 genius. It's as if the news about you has grown wings and spread quickly." Hearing her words, Ji Tianxing became even more worried and asked, "Granny, other than this, have you heard any other rumors?" "What other rumors?" Granny Long asked curiously. Ji Tianxing hesitated for a moment before explaining, "It's a rumor about my background. Oh, you're talking about that. Granny Long suddenly understood and nodded her head. There are some rumors that say that you're the reincarnation of Kenshin. Furthermore, they say that you have eyes and eyebrows. However, this rumor is not widespread and many people only think that it's baseless gossip. After all, how can Kenshin, who has been dead for thousands of years, come back to life? As she spoke, Granny Long observed Ji Tianqing's expression and reaction. Ji Tianqing's face was calm as he said in a low voice, "That means that the news has spread?" Granny Long nodded her head and did not say anything. As for Ji Tianqing's true identity, she already had an answer in her heart. She only wanted to know what Ji Tianqing's attitude was. "Tianqing, the rumors about your identity are too outrageous and I'm afraid that no one will believe them. If you don't want to be exposed, I will send people to suppress the news and prevent it from spreading. If you want to become famous and reach a higher level, you might as well use this opportunity to shock the world again." Ji Tianqing pondered in silence for a while before raising his head and saying with an indifferent expression, "Those who should know already know. Even if the news spreads, it will only let more unrelated people know. Granny, you don't need to worry about this and you don't need to cover it up. It will only arouse suspicion. What will come, but I already have the ability to bear it and am prepared for it." Granny Long understood his attitude and nodded her head with a smile. "That's good. As long as you make up your mind, Tianqing, Luotian Mountain and Luoshui God Nation will always be your strong backing." Ji Tianqing nodded his head slightly and asked, "By the way, have you reported the demon race's retreat and God Nation's victory to the Divine Master?" "Yes." Granny Long nodded her head. "Such good news, I naturally reported it to the Divine Master as soon as possible. In addition, the Divine Master has been in seclusion for 300 years and will be coming out soon." Chapter 2143. Ji Tianqing understood that martial god Luo Shui would definitely summon him after he came out of seclusion. In fact, he also wanted to meet martial god Luo Shui. He wanted to see how much she had grown. "Alright, if the Divine Master comes out of seclusion, please inform me." Ji Tianqing nodded and agreed to this matter. Granny Long smiled with satisfaction and continued, "In addition to this good news, I have another good news to tell you. In recent months, Yunyao has been in seclusion in Cloudwater Palace. After she refined that divine pearl, her cultivation soared and her realm advanced by leaps and bounds. Even I was shocked." At the mention of Yunyao, Ji Tianqing's interest was immediately piqued and he asked with bright eyes, "Oh? What happened to Yao Yao?" Granny Long said with a smile, "You just came back and haven't seen Yunyao yet, right? In the past 3 months, she has passed 3 heavenly tribulations in a row. It can be said that her strength has soared. I estimate that in half a month, she will pass another heavenly tribulation. Back then, you passed 3 heavenly tribulations in half a year, which was already shocking. Now, Yunyao is passing heavenly tribulation every month, which is an unprecedented miracle. The disciples and guards of Luotian Mountain are all scared silly." Speaking of this, Granny Long's face was full of gratification and pride. She was in a good mood. Ji Tianqing also found it incredible and was shocked. "Is that so? It's indeed incredible. At this rate, it won't be long before she can break through the martial sage realm and catch up with me." Granny Long frowned slightly and hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. "That's not necessarily the case. Your estimate is too optimistic. Previously, I visited Yunyao a few times and asked her about the specific situation. According to her estimate, that divine pearl can help her raise her realm by 5 or 6 levels. At most, she can reach the 9th level of the crossing tribulation realm. If she wants to break through the martial sage realm, the power of one divine pearl is not enough, unless she obtains another one." Ji Tianqing suddenly understood and nodded. "I see, no wonder you sent me an urgent message and asked me to come back as soon as possible." "Yes. Grandma Long nodded and said, "The divine pearl is too important to Yunyao. Not only can it help her increase her cultivation, but it can also prolong her life. Therefore, when I found out that a divine orb had appeared at the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly, I immediately informed you. You have already reached the martial sage realm and you are not even 1,000 years old. You meet the requirements to participate in the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly. Moreover, your battle prowess is outstanding, and no one in the same realm can defeat you. If you participate in the Shenwu Sacred Assembly, none of the young martial saints will be a match for you. That pearl that contains wind and fire will definitely be yours." Ji Tianqing thought for a while, then nodded seriously and said, "Granny, don't worry, I will definitely go to the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly. As long as it's related to the God Orb, even if it's just slightly similar, I won't miss it. Only, where would the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly be held? When will it be held?" Granny Long took out a jade slip from her sleeve and handed it to Ji Tianqing. She warned, according to the usual practice, the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly will be held in the Heaven's End Divine Nation at the Void Stage. It will be held on the 10th of the next month, so there is still half a month left. The details of the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly, as well as the process and results of the previous sacred assemblies, are all recorded in this jade slip. Go back and take a good look at it, so you can understand it better and be prepared. Ji Tianqing took the jade slip and bowed to Granny Long, saying, "Thank you Granny, for making such thorough preparations." Granny Long smiled and nodded. She took out another interspatial ring and handed it to him. "This time, you went to the north to quell the war and drove away the demon army. You have made a great contribution that is hard to come by in 1,000 years. The monarchs of the kingdoms in the north do not have the right to reward you. Logically speaking, the Divine Master should personally reward you, and confer you a title and glory. But the Divine Master has not come out of seclusion, so I will do it for you. The cultivation resources and magical treasures in this ring are all your rewards. Also, the Divine Master has bestowed upon you the title of Martial Saint Tianqing, the Imperial Protector War God, and the position of the Divine Nation's Protector Commander. You will be in charge of 90,000 immortal guards. In the Divine Nation, the Marshal's Mansion has also been prepared for you. You can stay there at any time." Ji Tianqing was startled. He kept the interspatial ring and asked curiously, "Granny Long, these titles and positions are all from the Divine Master Luo Shui?" "That's right." Granny Long smiled and explained, "The Imperial Protector War God is a title and glory. In the future, wherever you go to Luo Shui Divine Nation, you can deploy your troops. The billions of citizens of Luo Shui Divine Nation, all the soldiers and saint emperors will listen to your commands. The Imperial Protector Commander is also an empty position. If you want to train the immortal guards or give them any task, they will do it. But normally, if you don't want to share the burden, you can ignore it." Ji Tianqing did not say anything. He thought to himself, the Divine Nation is Luo Shui's immortal abode, and the Immortal Guard's commander is her most trusted right-hand man. She appointed me as the Immortal Guard's commander, which means she has entrusted me with her safety. It can be seen that she trusts me a lot. Could it be, she already knew my true identity? As he thought of this, an indescribable feeling arose in his heart. He thought to himself, she and I both know each other's identities and secrets, but we don't expose each other and we trust each other. She didn't let me down in the end. At this time, Granny Long saw that he was distracted and reminded him, "Tianqing, regarding your title and glory, this old one will announce it to the world very soon. You have been fighting outside for so long, and it's rare for you to come back. Quickly go and see Yunyao. If that's the case, then I will take my leave." Ji Tianqing came back to his senses and cupped his fists at Granny Long before he turned and left. As soon as he returned to Cloud Water Palace, the Golden Dragon and the Black Eagle came up to him and bowed respectfully. This subordinate pays his respects to young Master Ji. Ji Tianqing nodded and raised his hand to signal them to rise. He then walked towards Yunyao's room. The golden dragon stood guard outside the door. The black shadow followed and reminded, "Young master, master is in seclusion." "Yes, I know." Ji Tianqing had long expected that Yunyao had just refined the divine bead not long ago. Now that her strength had skyrocketed, she must have been in seclusion. "I'm just going to see her." The black shadow didn't say anything else and quietly guarded the door. Ji Tianqing walked to the corner of the room, activated the array formation of the secret room, and opened the door of the secret room. He stepped into the secret chamber and saw that the dark secret chamber was filled with dense five-colored spiritual light and was filled with a majestic aura of mana. In the middle of the secret room, Yunyao, who was wearing a moon-white dress, was sitting cross-legged on a futon refined from a piece of top-grade spirit jade. Her eyes were closed, her hands were placed on her knees, and she was concentrating on cultivating. Her whole body was enveloped in a layer of dark golden brilliance, exuding a vast aura. Ji Tianqing could clearly sense that she had reached the 7th stage of the crossing tribulation realm and was trying her best to break through to the 8th stage of the crossing tribulation realm. Chapter 2144. Ji Tianqing walked to Yunyao's side with light footsteps. He did not make a sound to avoid alarming her. He sat down in front of Yunyao and looked at her gently, his eyes filled with gratification. After not seeing her for a few months, Yunyao was still as beautiful as ever. Her temperament was otherworldly, and she was as pure as ice. Even though she was pregnant with 2 children, she did not look tired at all. She was still as beautiful as a fairy. Ji Tianqing stared at her for a long time and felt that he could not get enough of her. After a long silence, he muttered to himself, "Yao Yao, it's a pity that you're cultivating in seclusion and can't hear what I'm saying. However, I have 2 pieces of good news for you now that I've come to see you. The war in the north has subsided, and the demon army has retreated. After this battle, Dark North Mountain's vitality has been greatly damaged, and they will need to recuperate for the next 20 years. They will not be able to invade the Luoshui Divine Kingdom again. In addition, I also successfully broke through to the Martial Sage Realm during the battle. Now that I've returned to the Martial Sage Realm, I can roam the Shinwu continent fearlessly. Besides the 3 martial gods and the ancestral demon god, no one can do anything to me. I really hope that you can break through to the Martial Sage Realm as soon as possible. Don't worry, when I go to the Heavenly End Divine Kingdom this time, I will definitely win that Wind-Fire Pearl. If that pearl is really the divine pearl that you need, then you will be able to break through to the Martial Sage Realm very soon." Ji Tianqing lowered his voice and spoke at a steady pace. As soon as he finished speaking, a clear child's voice rang out in his mind. "Father, don't you know how much Mother missed and worried about you? Since you're back, Yaya will wake Mother up so that you can talk to her." Without a doubt, this crisp and childish voice of a girl was Yaya's soul transmission. Ji Tianqing's body shook, and he looked at Yunyao's belly in disbelief. A surprised smile appeared on his face. Heavens, our Yaya actually knows how to transmit messages with her divine soul. As he spoke, he could not help but reach out to touch Yunyao's belly. However, his sudden awakening would definitely disturb Yunyao's cultivation. As a result, he hurriedly withdrew his hand and said in a low voice, "Yaya, Mother is at a critical juncture in her closed-door cultivation. You can't disturb her, let alone wake her up." Yaya's voice rang out in his mind once more. Since Father has said so, then Yaya will not wake Mother up. Father, Yaya and Big Brother are already at the soul-refining realm. Naturally, they can communicate with each other through their souls. Ji Tianqing was surprised again. He smiled and said, "I didn't think that you would reach the soul-refining stage from the Sky Yuan stage in just 1 year. Looks like you've both cultivated the 9 Heavens Cloud Dragon technique and the Limitless Stars technique to a small degree. I wonder when all of you will be born. By then, all of you will probably be at the Essence Soul realm, right? Humph. Yaya pretended to be displeased and snorted. She said angrily, Father, are you saying that because you don't want to see Yaya and Big Brother earlier? Ha ha ha. Ji Tianqing could not help but laugh. Halfway through, he was afraid that he would wake Yunyao up, so he hurriedly lowered his voice. Yaya was amused by him and giggled. She said mischievously, Father, are you that afraid of Mother? Ahem. Ji Tianqing pretended to cough and was about to give a sincere explanation. At this time, another clear and tender voice rang out. Yaya, Father is not afraid of Mother, but respects and loves her. To Father, Mother is like the bright moon in the ninth heaven. She is a rare treasure. He cannot tolerate any mishaps or grievances. It was obvious that this was Qinchin's voice. Although he was not born, he already had extensive knowledge and experience. When he spoke, he sounded like a little adult. Of course, he was more like an elegant and handsome young man. Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, Yaya, did you hear what Big Brother said? Humph. Father is shameless. Yaya pretended to be unhappy and said coquettishly, Yaya wants to hear Father say it himself. Why did Father let Big Brother explain it for you? Ji Tianqing chuckled and said playfully, Yaya is so mischievous. You are not like Mother, and you are not like Father. You will definitely be an unruly little princess in the future. Qinchin, on the other hand, is so well educated and considerate. He is very much like Father when he was young. Without waiting for him to finish, Yaya mercilessly exposed him. Humph. Father is lying again. Mother said long ago that Big Brother is not like Father. Father was very old-fashioned and boring when he was young. Ah. Your mother really said that? Ji Tianqing immediately blushed with shame. Yaya said with a little pride, of course. Mother said that if it weren't for the fact that Father is handsome, loyal, and hard-working, Mother wouldn't have married you. Ji Tianqing did not know whether to laugh or cry. He asked, Yaya, are you lying to Father? Yaya immediately stopped talking. Qinchin hurriedly helped her out and changed the topic. Father, Chen knows that you are busy with work and are pressed for time. I am afraid that you will have to leave again soon after coming back to visit Mother. However, Mother is at a critical juncture in her closed-door cultivation. It is not convenient for her to meet you. Why don't you let Chen or pass on the message if you have anything to say to Mother? Ji Tianqing nodded and said, yes, Chen is still the most sensible. I do have something to say to your mother. Chen, remember it well. Then, he told Chen and Yaya what he wanted to say to Yunyao and asked them to pass on the message. After he finished, he asked about Chen and Yaya's cultivation situation. The Nine Heavens Cloud Dragon technique and the Infinite Stars technique were both true sky god techniques. They were extremely mysterious. Even though Chen and Yaya were both extraordinarily talented, it was inevitable that there would be some ambiguities. After Ji Tianqing asked about their situation, he patiently answered their questions. When Chen and Yaya heard this, they were suddenly enlightened. All of their confusion was resolved. After a full 6 hours, Ji Tianqing reluctantly left the secret room. The current him had a beautiful wife and adorable and smart children. His life could be said to be complete. If he could choose, he would rather not leave and stay by his wife and children's side. Unfortunately, he had no choice. There were too many things that he had not done. Perhaps, he could only enjoy the joy of having a family when he reached the peak of the divine way and became invincible. The next morning, Ji Tianqing left Luotian Mountain. This time, he was going to Heaven End Divine Nation to participate in the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly and meet the young martial saints of the continent. However, he already had a plan in mind. From Luotian Mountain to Heaven End Divine Nation, he could take a detour and pass by Tianzhu Mountain. He had not returned to Tianzhu Mountain for too long and was worried about the situation there. He could use this opportunity to take a detour back to Tianzhu Mountain and check on the situation of Huanglong Daoist, Black Dragon, Qian Yu and White Dragon's remnant soul. Chapter 2145. Ji Tianqing traveled at top speed and arrived at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains 7 days later. After breaking through to the martial sage realm, his traveling speed had also increased by a few steps. He seemed to be strolling in the sky, but in reality, every step he took covered a distance of 50 to 60 miles. As for the distance he could teleport, it had reached a terrifying distance of 300 miles. If he used some special techniques, he could even teleport 2,000 to 3,000 miles. Of course, he could only use these special techniques occasionally and could not use them continuously. When Ji Tianqing returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, the sun was setting in the west. The faint golden afterglow of the setting sun shone on the towering Pillar of Heaven's mountains, causing the entire mountain to be covered in a layer of sacred golden light. Hundreds of flowers bloomed on the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, creating a shade of green. There were also flowing springs, waterfalls, and hanging icicles. The surroundings were surrounded by white jade and colorful spiritual qi, making it seem like a dream. Above the clouds, there were even spiritual cranes flying past the peak of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Flocks of birds circled around, making it look like an otherworldly cave abode. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing felt a deep sense of comfort. With the passage of time, the power of the Big Dipper star Luo and the Earth Fiend spirit praying array have also gradually recovered to their peak and become more and more powerful. Now, the area within the 108 mountains around the Pillar of Heaven's mountains has become a paradise full of spiritual qi. Especially the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, the spiritual qi is extremely abundant. It is finally going to be restored to a martial sage realm. These thoughts flashed through his mind as he slowly descended from the sky. The holy city and dojo at the peak of the mountain were still the same as before. However, upon closer inspection, he could see some changes. The dojo, the 18 palaces, and the 36 courtyards were all cleaned and spotless. Moreover, there were people living in each of the palaces and courtyards, making them seem prosperous. The forest, herb garden, and beast garden outside the holy city had also been renovated. Hundreds of spiritual flowers and herbs were planted there, and many rare spiritual beasts were raised there. The current Pillar of Heaven's mountains had finally recovered the appearance and aura of a first-rate sect. Ji Tianqing could tell at a glance that the Huanglong Daoist must have worked hard during the time he was not at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Swoosh! He descended from the sky and landed outside the gate of the Pillar Palace. The guards at the door were obviously stunned when they saw him. After a moment of hesitation, the guards respectfully bowed and said, "Greetings to young Master Ji." Although the disciples and guards of the Tianzhu mountain were secretly guessing that Ji Tianqing might be the reincarnation of their Grandmaster Kenshin, they were still worried that Ji Tianqing might be the reincarnation of their Grandmaster. However, everyone could only guess in their hearts. They did not dare to be sure, nor did they dare to discuss it openly. On the surface, everyone addressed him as young Master Ji and respected him as the successor of Kenshin. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and signaled the guards to dispense with the formalities. He asked in a dignified tone, "Where is Huanglong Daoist? Take me to see him." The leading guard hurriedly bowed and replied, reporting to young Master Ji, "The great immortal is currently cultivating in the Heavenly Pillar Palace. It is said that he has made another breakthrough in his divine arts." Oh! Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and revealed a gratified smile. "Since that's the case, I'll go take care of other things first. I'll look for him later." After saying that, he entered the Heavenly Pillar Palace alone and returned to his residence. Just as he returned to his residence, Ji Bai, who was guarding the entrance, respectfully greeted him. "Ji Bai greets young master." Ji Tianqing looked at him in confusion and asked, Ji Bai, why are you guarding here instead of cultivating in your residence? Don't tell me, after I leave, you'll still be guarding the entrance every day like usual. Ji Bai did not hide anything and replied truthfully, reporting to young master, this subordinate and Shohei are your followers and guards. We must fulfill our responsibilities. Even if young master goes out to do things, this subordinate and Shohei will still guard your residence. Pedantic. Ji Tianqing was both angry and amused. He asked, when I'm not at the heavenly pillar mountain, you and Shohei should return to your residence and cultivate. As for my residence, there are maids on duty to clean it and guards to take turns to guard it. How can you become strong martial artists if you waste your time like this? Tell me, did Huanglong ask you to do this? Or was it an elder's idea? Ji Bai cupped his hands and explained, young master, this is not an order from the great deity or any elder. This subordinate and Shohei are willing to do it. Since young master has ordered, this subordinate and Shohei will obey and will not be so stupid in the future. Ji Tianqing obviously knew that this was Ji Bai and Shohei's loyalty. Of course, he did not blame Ji Bai. After staring at Ji Bai for a while, he asked, Ji Bai, the technique you cultivate is the third branch of the stellar sword technique, the limitless wind and thunder technique. In the past few years, you have been stuck at the peak of the 6th level and have not been able to break through to the 7th level, right? Ji Bai was stunned for a moment and quickly nodded, young master's eyes are as sharp as torches. That's right. Ji Tianqing nodded and flicked a dark golden ball of light into Ji Bai's forehead. The ball of light the size of a date pit immediately entered Ji Bai's sea of consciousness and blended into his memories. This is some of my experience. It should be able to help you break through. Go back and study it well. Ji Bai only felt his soul dizzy for a moment, and then a vast sea of memories and information poured into his soul. When he heard Ji Tianqing's words, he immediately knelt down and kowtowed in surprise. Thank you for your guidance and kindness, young master. This subordinate will remember it for the rest of my life. Ji Tianqing smiled and waved his hand, then turned and stepped into the bedroom. When he entered the room, Shohei was holding a feather duster and a rag, carefully wiping the tables, chairs, and screens. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and also reprimanded Shohei. Moreover, he also gave Shohei the corresponding guidance and rewards for his cultivation. After Shohei respectfully bowed and thanked him, he didn't dare to disturb him and quickly left. In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianqing was the only one left in the bedroom. Only then did he enter the secret room and go through the secret passage to the Star Divine Furnace deep underground. Swish! He followed the passage surrounded by starfire and flew all the way down. Soon, he arrived at the Divine Furnace. He saw that the Star Divine Furnace within a radius of 100 miles had long been filled with Star Divine fire. There was a silver sea of fire in all directions, constantly surging with waves of fire. Ji Tianqing circled around the sea of fire and quickly found Black Dragon. Black Dragon was still cultivating in seclusion. Its body had doubled in size, reaching a height of 3,000 feet, making it look like a small black mountain. Now, it cultivated the star transformation art and constantly absorbed the star power of the Star Divine Furnace. It had reached the 5th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. It was at the critical moment of its cultivation and seemed to be working hard to break through to the 6th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Ji Tianqing saw that its body was full of scars, both old and knew how hard it usually cultivated. Even so, it had never slacked off in the past 2 years and had always been in seclusion in the Star Divine Furnace. Ji Tianqing didn't disturb Black Dragon and went to see Qian Yu. Qian Yu's state was obviously much more leisurely. With the protection of the divine artifact necklace, she actually fell asleep. Chapter 2146. The Black Dragon was dull, but hard-working. Qian Yu was cunning and mischievous, but she had her own opportunities. Both of them grew quickly, so Ji Tianqing was no longer worried about them. He flew to the corner of the star divine cauldron to check on the white dragon god. The array that he had set up was still intact. Inside the array, the glazed vase had expanded several times. It was as big as a bucket and was floating quietly in the sea of fire. Ji Tianqing flew closer and took a closer look. He was overjoyed. A 1-meter-long dragon-shaped white light was coiled within the translucent bottle, and it was flickering with a lustrous light. The longevity vine had disappeared completely. Apparently, the white dragon had refined it. Even the martial sage souls that Ji Tianqing had given to the white dragon had disappeared without a trace. The 3-foot-long white dragon was the remnant soul of the white dragon god. Ji Tianqing smiled when he saw that the white dragon god had recovered. The white dragon god's remnant soul sensed his aura and moved. It twisted its body slowly and raised its lifelike dragon head. It looked at Ji Tianqing through the glazed vase. When it saw Ji Tianqing's face, it was stunned and its body trembled violently. After a long silence, it opened its eyes wide and sent a soul message. It was sad and happy at the same time. Master? Is it really you? Master? I'm not dreaming, am I? It was the voice of a young man. It sounded in Ji Tianqing's mind. He was crying and trembling with excitement. Ji Tianqing had mixed feelings when he heard that. Many memories flashed through his mind. He nodded solemnly and said emotionally, "White Dragon, you've finally regained consciousness. My efforts over the past few years have not been in vain." The white dragon was still immersed in excitement and could not believe that it was true. It looked at Ji Tianqing with bright eyes and asked in disbelief, "Master, what's going on? Didn't we die in the starry sky? How did we come back to life? Am I dreaming, or have we never died at all? Are we still in the palace of the King of Gods?" Ji Tianqing couldn't help but laugh. He opened the glazed treasure bottle and released the white dragon remnant soul. Thousands of years have passed in the blink of an eye, like a dream or an illusion. But no matter what, we are finally back. The white dragon quickly flew out of the glazed vase and circled around Ji Tianqing a few times, carefully sizing him up. Only after confirming that Ji Tianqing was a living body of flesh and blood did it believe that everything was real. "Master, we really came back to life. It was too unbelievable. Master, what kind of divine ability did you use? He actually brought us back from the dead." Ji Tianqing smiled and shook his head. "It's a long story. I'll explain it to you later. In short, I have long made preparations and plans to play a game with the heavenly Tao." The white dragon nodded as if it understood. It said excitedly, "I knew it. With Master's protection, no matter how I look for trouble, I won't die in the end." Ji Tianqing stretched out his finger and flicked its head. He laughed and scolded, "You little brat, you've already died once. Why are you still so playful? Hee hee." The white dragon revealed a sly smile and said proudly, "Master's divine power is unparalleled. As long as you stay in the palace of the King of Gods, you can control the myriad of worlds. I've never liked to be restrained. As long as I have Master's protection, I can roam the world." Ji Tianqing patted its head and said earnestly, "Don't worry. Although that is the glory of the past, we will return to the peak sooner or later. Come, take a look at where we are first." The white dragon flew around him a few more times and looked around. It asked curiously, "Master, where is this? The myriad star source in the depths of the scattered star sea? Or a space-time black hole?" Ji Tianqing chuckled and said in a complicated tone, "This is the pillar of heaven's mountains, the divine star furnace under the ground." "Ah! Pillar of heaven's mountains?" The white dragon was stunned and said in disbelief, "Master, how did we return to the mortal world? Don't we have to start all over again? Pillar of heaven's mountains. Oh right, where are junior brother Huang Long and Xie Wudao? Are they still alive? Ji Tianqing couldn't help but roll his eyes and said in a bad mood, "You're alive, how can they be dead? Are you so concerned about your senior brother and junior brother?" The white dragon quickly shook its head and said in a firm tone, "Master, they are both my junior brothers. Don't get it wrong." Ji Tianqing couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with him. He asked with a smile, "Before you woke up, I asked you to refine a strand of Lan Kuan's soul. Did you refine it?" Lan Kuan. The white dragon thought for a while and suddenly remembered. "Oh, I remember now. There is such a thing. I have already refined it. Master, when I was in a daze, I seemed to hear you say that you found a Kuan for me and wanted to help me fulfill my wish. Is it true? You really found a Kuan?" Ji Tianqing chuckled and said, "Of course. Ha ha ha. Master is really awesome." The white dragon was wild with excitement and happily spun a few times. He suddenly realized that he said something wrong and quickly changed his words. Cough cough. What this disciple means is that Master is really omnipotent. You can actually find a Kuan in the mortal world. Back then, this disciple traveled all over the heavens and thousands of worlds and didn't meet a living Kuan. Ji Tianqing didn't say more and flew up with it in one hand. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, he left the divine star furnace with the white dragon and returned to the secret room. He took out the sword of burial of heaven and placed it in the secret room. After opening the sword world, he personally brought the white dragon into the sword world. After a while, he came to the sky above a huge lake. The lake was thousands of miles wide and the water surface was sparkling. The lake water was so clear that the bottom could be seen. The ice blue Kuan was leisurely lying at the bottom of the lake and seemed to be sleeping. Ji Tianqing stood above the lake and pointed to the ice blue figure at the bottom of the lake. He said to the white dragon, "Look, that's the blue Kuan that I found for you." The white dragon was wild with excitement. It flew around Ji Tianqing several times and kept rubbing his arms and clothes. It was full of excitement and said, "Thank you so much, Master. This disciple only has 2 wishes in this life. Master, you have helped this disciple to fulfill half of them." After that, it couldn't wait to fly to the bottom of the lake to observe the blue Kuan closely. At this moment, the blue Kuan that was sleeping was awakened. Suddenly seeing a white light flying over, it subconsciously opened its mouth and spat out an ice blue brilliance. Bang! The white dragon couldn't dodge in time and was immediately hit by the ice blue brilliance. It screamed and flew out. Although it wasn't defeated, it was frozen by the ice blue brilliance and sealed into a block of ice. It flew out in the air for 10 miles before falling into the lake and floating on the water surface. Chapter 2147. The white dragon had just woken up not long ago. It was still a remnant soul and was very weak. Lan Kuan had the strength of the 7th layer of the crossing calamity realm. He subconsciously spat out a cloud of dark north Xian Bing. How could the white dragon resist it? The white dragon was sealed by the dark north Xian Bing and floated on the lake. It couldn't break the seal by itself, so it had to ask Ji Tianqing for help. It said with a voice transmission, "Master, the Kuan you found seems to have a tendency to be violent. It's the first time I met it, and it welcomed me in such a special way." The white dragon's tone was quite depressed, but it could not hide the excitement in its heart. Ji Tianqing chuckled and said, "You are too impatient." At this time, Lan Kuan flew from the bottom of the lake to Ji Tianqing and nodded to him. "Duh. Master, why are you here? Are you here to visit me?" Lan Kuan blinked its huge eyes and looked at Ji Tianqing with bright eyes. Obviously, it was too bored to sleep alone in the big lake. It would be happy and grateful that Ji Tianqing could come to see it and talk to it. "And, I came to see how you are doing." Ji Tianqing nodded and looked at it seriously. He criticized, "Lan Kuan, I taught you the sky-swallowing technique, which is the most precious king-level technique in the world. You don't know how to cherish it and don't meditate and cultivate. You actually sleep at the bottom of the lake. I am very disappointed. Seeing that he was angry, Lan Kuan lowered his head in frustration and said in a low voice, Master, I fought with the demon army on the battlefield before and spent a lot of energy. At this time, a block of ice the size of a house flew over. The white dragon's voice came out from it, and it quickly pleaded for Lan Kuan. Master, don't be too harsh on Lan Kuan. It is still young, and it has suffered a lot of injuries in the previous battle. Look at the scars on its body. Why is it a little ugly? It's different from what I imagined. At first, White Dragon was still pleading for Lan Kuan, but halfway through his words, after carefully sizing up Lan Kuan, he suddenly showed a look of disdain. When Ji Tianqing saw that it was still sealed by the Xian Bing, he waved his hand and released a stream of star fire to disperse the Xian Bing. With the seal removed, the White Dragon regained its freedom and circled twice in the air. Lan Kuan also turned his head to look at it, his eyes widening in surprise. Master, this little white snake, who is it? Before Ji Tianqing could say anything, White Dragon suddenly became unhappy. Hey, fat-head fish, who are you calling little white snake? Look at your big eyes, why are your eyesight so bad? Did the water get in? I'm clearly a dragon, a majestic and mighty white dragon. How can you mistake me for a snake? The white dragon flew under Lan Kuan's nose and showed him his dragon-shaped body with an indignant expression. Lan Kuan looked at him blankly, blinked his eyes blankly, and muttered to himself, but, how can there be such a small dragon? Even an ordinary snake is bigger than you. After that, he didn't care about White Dragon's reaction. He stared at Ji Tianqing with disappointment and asked, Master, before you said that you would find a partner for me, a wise and carefree white dragon. Could it be this little snake? Ji Tianqing showed a smile and nodded with a kind face, yes, it's him. However, Lan Kuan, don't worry, White Dragon has just woken up, and now is the weakest time, so he doesn't look good. When his soul recovers, he can become a white dragon soaring in the 9 heavens. Moreover, he is a divine monarch who has dominated the galaxy, the strongest expert under my master. It's a great blessing for you to be able to follow him. After listening to his words, Lan Kuan shook his huge head again and said reluctantly, Master, I don't want this partner. It's too small, too ugly, not like a divine dragon at all. White Dragon was so angry that his beard was flying, and he kept poking Lan Kuan's eyes with his tail. Fat-head fish, I don't think you're ugly, but you dare to dislike me? To be honest, if I was at my peak, such a weak fish like you could only be roasted by me. Lan Kuan stared at White Dragon and exclaimed in disbelief, you not only look down on me, but also want to kill me? White Dragon shook his head and said with a smile, not to kill you, to eat you. As soon as he finished speaking, Lan Kuan opened his mouth and spat out a cold dazzling light. Bang! With another muffled sound, White Dragon was blasted out again and turned into a piece of ice that fell into the lake. Ji Tianqing sighed helplessly, waved his hand to shoot out a starlight, picked up the ice, and removed the Xian Bing seal. Seeing that White Dragon and Lan Kuan were about to argue again, he shouted with a dignified face, shut up. White Dragon and Lan Kuan immediately shut their mouths and did not dare to act rashly. Ji Tianqing said earnestly, right now, all of you are in your weakest state, and also in your most miserable state. But in the future, you will definitely become a supreme Tao powerhouse and roam the world. I hope that you two can get along well, help each other, and grow up as soon as possible. Master's time is very tight, and I don't have the mood to let you two play. You two can be alone for a while. Master will leave Tianzhu Mountain tomorrow and go to Tianzhu God Nation. After saying that, Ji Tianqing turned and was about to leave. Lan Kuan was silent, but he did not have the intention to object. White Dragon thought for a moment, and quickly followed Ji Tianqing, and asked, Master, why are you going to Tianju God Nation? Is that old thing Tianju still alive? Ji Tianqing said calmly, it's only been 1,000 years, Tianju is still alive and ambitious. However, Master will not meet him when I go to Tianju God Nation this time, Master has other things to do. White Dragon said without hesitation, Master, I don't want to stay in Tianju Mountain, please take me with you. Ji Tianqing glanced at it, and chuckled, you will cause trouble wherever you go, Master is not willing to take you, you should stay in Tianju Mountain and cultivate. White Dragon quickly wrapped around his arm, and begged, Master, I am now a remnant soul, how can I cultivate? Even if I want to recover my strength, I have to devour souls. Why don't you bring your disciple along? It's too boring to stay in Tianju Mountain. Ji Tianqing said playfully, you don't want to stay in Tianju Mountain, are you afraid of being bored, or afraid that Huang Long will make fun of you? Humph! How dare junior brother Huang Long make fun of me? White Dragon snorted, and continued to beg, Master, take me with you, I promise I will not cause trouble for you. Moreover, Fathead Fish has been cultivating in the sword world, I can accompany it and cultivate a relationship with it. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment, and then nodded in agreement. Okay, Master can promise you, but you have to be honest and coordinate with Lan Kun as soon as possible. Seeing that he finally agreed, White Dragon immediately smiled and bowed to thank him. Chapter 2148. Ji Tianqing returned to the secret room and kept the burial of Heaven Sword. He did not care how Bai Long and Lan Kun would interact or if they could maintain a peaceful relationship. He believed that Bai Long would be able to convince Lan Kun with his glib tongue. Not long after, a guard came to the secret room to report the news. Young Master Ji, the great deity wishes to see you. Bring him to the study room and wait. I will be there soon. Ji Tianqing replied and walked out of the secret room. When he rushed to the study room, Huang Long Daoist was already waiting for him. Greetings, Master. Seeing Ji Tianqing enter the study room, Huang Long Daoist quickly came forward and bowed respectfully. You may rise. Ji Tianqing nodded and walked to the study table. He sat down and looked at Huang Long Daoist with a smile. I have not seen you for a year and you have made a breakthrough in your strength. Huang Long Daoist quickly cupped his hands and bowed. He answered truthfully, Master, I have been in the rank 5 martial sage realm for 200 years. With your guidance, I made a breakthrough. I am not talented and this small improvement is not worth mentioning. Master, you have recovered to the martial sage realm in such a short period of time. This is unbelievable. Furthermore, when you broke through to the martial sage realm, you caused the golden light to fill the sky and the 9 dragons to illuminate the world. This news has spread throughout the mainland. When I heard this news, I was shocked and excited. Ji Tianqing nodded and said sincerely, when I returned, I thought that after I broke through to the martial sage realm, I would stay in the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain for a long period of time and plan for the development of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain. I wanted to restore the glory of the past as soon as possible. However, I am currently tied up with worldly affairs. There are too many things that I have yet to finish. I really can't leave. Huang Long Daoist immediately understood what he meant and said solemnly, Master, please do not worry. I will guard the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain and do my best to rebuild the Holy Land and restore it to its former glory. Master, you are a god and have many important things to do. You can do them with peace of mind. With me guarding the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain, you do not have to worry. Yes. Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a gratified expression, it's best that you can understand Master's meaning. I've seen it before and there are many changes to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. It seems that you've been working hard. Huang Long Daoist did not dare to claim credit for himself. He hurriedly bowed and said, it is my duty to share Shizuan's burden. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and asked, briefly explain the current situation. Huanglong Daoist organized his thoughts and reported seriously, reporting to Master, our sect has recovered some of its vitality and has the foundation and power of a first-rate sect. Currently, he had 8,000 disciples, 2,000 of which were disciples and 6,000 servants. Within the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, there were 9 sects, 18 factions, more than 400 cities and villages, and close to 500 million warriors and civilians. Within the holy city, the 18 palaces and the 36 halls all had their disciples staying in them. The Spirit Beast Garden, Spirit Herb Garden, and Artifact Forging Workshop were all open to the public. Master, you've repeatedly created miracles and created a shocking legend of invincibility. This has also made the Pillar of Heaven's mountains more and more famous. Not only have the people under the Pillar of Heaven's mountains submitted, but many warriors and civilians from the 3 divine kingdoms have also moved to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. All in all, our sect is currently thriving and the situation is great. We're not far from recovering to our peak. Ji Tianqing nodded and instructed, you have to send people to investigate the civilians and warriors from the 3 divine kingdoms. Especially the people from the Heaven and Divine Kingdom. Do not let any spies in. Disciple understands and has always done so. Huanglong Daoist replied. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while. He asked again, oh right, the cultivation resources for the disciples have always been doubled. The cultivation resources that Master left behind should be used up soon, right? This. Huanglong Daoist hesitated for a while before answering truthfully, reporting to Master, the cultivation resources that Master left behind, in addition to our sect's inventory, have been used up long ago. Although Disciple has thought of ways to open up new mines and plant spirit herbs, the results are too slow. However, a few months ago, when you were leading the army from the Luoshui Divine Kingdom, the Luoshui Divine Kingdom sent a large number of cultivation resources. Because of this, our sect was able to recover. So that's how it is. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly, a complicated look flashed in his eyes. Then, he took out a ring from his spatial ring and handed it to Huanglong Daoist. When Master returned to the Luoshui Divine Kingdom, Granny Long gave me this ring, saying that it was a reward from the Luoshui Martial God. Master has already checked it. There are mountains of spirit stones, spirit pills, magic treasures, talismans, and so on. The value is over 1 billion. Master has kept some rare treasures for my own use. As for the ordinary spirit stones, spirit pills, and other resources, use them to enrich our sect's treasury. Huanglong Daoist was shocked and said in disbelief, Master, the Luoshui Divine Kingdom sent over 400 million cultivation resources a few months ago, and now they're giving you 1 billion cultivation resources. Isn't that Luoshui Martial God too generous? Disciple feels that this matter is fishy. Could it be that, the Luoshui Martial God already knows your true identity? Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said with a solemn expression, she should have guessed Master's identity a long time ago. Some rumors and news in the recent 2 years made her even more certain. The reason why she did this is to help us rebuild the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. It can be considered as returning a favor to Master. So that's how it is. Huanglong Daoist was enlightened and said with a gratified expression, for the past 1,000 years, only the Luoshui Divine Kingdom has secretly taken care of our sect. Disciple knows this in his heart. Now that Master has returned, the Luoshui Divine Kingdom will definitely be our sect's most reliable ally. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and said, Master will go to the Heaven and Divine Kingdom tomorrow. Guard the Pillar of Heaven's mountains well and be careful. If you encounter any trouble, send a message to Master or ask the Luoshui Divine Kingdom for help. Disciple understands. Huanglong Daoist cupped his hands and bowed. Ji Tianqing reminded him a few more words before getting up and leaving. After returning to his residence, he circulated his qi and adjusted his breathing for a few hours. When the sky brightened, he quietly left the pillar of heaven's mountains and flew to the heaven-end divine kingdom. This time, he didn't bring Qian Yu and the black dragon with him, only the blue kun and the white dragon. On the way, he had nothing to do, so he used his divine sense to check the situation in the sword world. It was fine if he didn't see it, but when he saw it, he was shocked. The white dragon was actually sitting on the blue kun's head, flying over thousands of mountains and rivers, rushing to peaceful Earth City. After the two of them arrived at peaceful Earth City, they didn't harm the Earth spirit race's dwarves. They only clamored in the sky, asking the Xitigarbha divine armor to come out. The Xitigarbha divine armor had been sleeping in the underground mine. After being awakened, it angrily flew into the sky and confronted the blue kun. The white dragon then instigated the blue kun to lure the Xitigarbha divine armor to a remote mountain to teach it a lesson. Chapter 2149. Ji Tianqing was too lazy to care about White Dragon bringing Lan Kun to cause trouble. Anyway, he knew that White Dragon would not harm the people of the Earth spirit race. Even that Xitigarbha divine armor would at most be beaten up. There would not be any future trouble. Ji Tianqing retracted his divine sense and continued to rush to Heaven-End God Nation. Before leaving, he had already read the jade slip given by Granny Long. It recorded the matters of the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly. The previous Divine Martial Sacred Assemblies were held on the Void Platform. The Void Platform was a mysterious space outside of this world. In the endless void, the vast stars could be seen clearly. The entrance to the Void Platform was in Heaven-End God Nation Sky City. Sky City was in the center of Heaven-End God Nation. Thousands of miles away was the famous Heaven-End Mountain. Heaven-End Mountain was the sacred martial ground of Heaven-End God Nation. It was also Heaven-End Martial God's training ground. Its status was equal to God Sealing Mountain and God Luo Mountain. Sky City was the closest city to Heaven-End Mountain. It had a history of 3,000 years. The ancient city was majestic and vast. The city walls were tall and towering. It covered an area of 300 miles and could accommodate millions of martial artists and civilians. Since ancient times, Sky City had always been prosperous. It gathered martial artists from all over the world. The several empires of Heaven-End God Nation had to pass through Sky City. As early as 1,000 years ago, Kenshin had been to Heaven-End God Nation and passed by Sky City. But he did not stay in the city at that time, so he did not have any impression of Sky City. 6 days later, Ji Tianqing arrived at Sky City as scheduled. It was noon and the sky was a little dark. Scattered gray clouds floated in the sky. The dim sunlight could not penetrate the clouds. Occasionally, a bit of light would shine through the gaps. A few hundred miles away, Ji Tianqing saw a dark brown majestic city on the ground in front of him. The city was surrounded by dark green plains. It was covered with grass and forests. 1,000 miles away were mountains. Arriving near the sky-gazing city, Ji Tianqing observed the ancient city from a close distance. He could feel an ancient and vigorous aura. The towering city walls were hundreds of meters tall and stretched for hundreds of miles, surrounding and protecting the entire Wangtian city. The city was filled with rows upon rows of palaces and pavilions. All kinds of houses and buildings of different styles were scattered in all directions. The wide streets and alleys were bustling with activity. Most of them were armed with swords and sabers. Their eyes were bright, and their bodies exuded a fierce or powerful aura. Even the peddlers and pawns peddling their wares on the streets were all powerful. None of them were ordinary people. Even though they were still far away, they could already hear the clamor. Ji Tianqing came to the east gate and followed the bustling crowd into sky-gazing city. There were close to 100 guards on both sides of the city gate. They were all dressed in black cold iron armor and held long spears that flickered with cold light. Their auras were cold and austere. However, the guards did not check the people who entered and left the city. It was probably because of the divine martial sacred assembly that the number of martial artists entering and leaving Sky City had increased by several times in the past few days. Although only a few people were qualified to participate in the divine martial sacred assembly. Those people would bring a large group of disciples, followers, and guards with them. Very few people came alone like Ji Tianqing. Moreover, there were countless martial artists who came to Sky City just to watch the show. It was also good to be able to appreciate the elegance of the young martial saints. After entering Sky City, Ji Tianqing walked calmly to the center of the city and looked around calmly. At this moment, a series of shouts came from behind him. "Look, it's the honor guard of Marshal Saint Qingshan. Everyone, get out of the way. Marshal Saint Qingshan has arrived. Don't block the way. Everyone, get to the side of the road. If you offend Marshal Saint Qingshan, be careful of your heads." As the noisy shouts sounded, the martial artists and people beside Ji Tianqing all retreated to the sides of the road. Ji Tianqing turned his head and saw a guard of honor of more than 100 people passing through the city gate in a majestic manner. They were walking over in a dignified manner. The guards in the guard of honor were all wearing the Jin family's robes and holding halberds. Their eyes were as sharp as lightning. At first glance, one could tell that they were all powerful experts. 18 young guards were leading 6 celestial horses that were as red as fire, pulling a dazzling carriage. Around the carriage, there were more than a dozen young and beautiful maids in green clothes. All of them were holding swords and had a cold temperament. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, Marshal Saint Qingshan. I've never heard of him before. He should be a young expert who rose in the last few hundred years. There seems to be a record of this person in the jade slip that Granny Long gave me. This person seems to be the Holy Emperor of the Qingshan Empire under the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation. He's the youngest martial saint. No wonder he's so arrogant. At this moment, a white-haired old man walked out from the crowd and said to Ji Tianqing anxiously, "Young man, don't just stand there. Didn't you see the guard of honor of Marshal Saint Qingshan? You're in the middle of the road. If you anger Marshal Saint Qingshan, you'll have to bear the consequences." Ji Tianqing glanced at the white-haired old man. Seeing the anxiety and worry in his eyes, he nodded with a smile and said, "Thank you for the reminder." After saying that, he followed the white-haired old man to the side of the road and stood in the crowd. The people on both sides of the road all kept quiet. They looked at the guard of honor with reverence, not daring to make a noise. After the guard of honor of Marshal Saint Qingshan passed by, the crowd showed a relieved expression. Soon after, the crowd began to discuss. Why did Marshal Saint Qingshan arrive early? Logically speaking, he should be very close to Wangtian City. Maybe there's a reason. How would we know? In the last 200 years, Marshal Saint Qingshan has been in the top 10 for 4 consecutive Shenwu sacred assemblies. In the last sacred assembly, he even ranked 4th. He's really famous. I hope that in this Shenwu sacred assembly, Marshal Saint Qingshan can enter the top 3. The Honorable 4th Divine Son has been ranked first for 10 consecutive sacred assemblies. If Marshal Saint Qingshan can also enter the top 3, then our Tianjue Divine Nation can occupy 2 of the top 3 positions, completely suppressing the Taihao and Luoshui Divine Nations. Haha, if that's the case, the other 2 Divine Nations will lose face. I'm really looking forward to it. Ji Tianqing stood in the crowd, silently listening to the crowd's discussion. His expression did not change. Not long after, the warriors and the people on both sides of the road dispersed. Ji Tianqing also turned and left, continuing to rush to the center of the city. He had calculated the time. The Shenwu Sacred Assembly would be held the day after tomorrow. He arrived at Wangtian City 2 days in advance. He had to find a place to stay in the city and wait patiently. 2 hours later, he walked to the center of the city. Not far from the city square, he found an inn to stay in. This inn, called Donglai, occupied the entire palace. The decoration was very magnificent. Chapter 2150. Not only was the East Inn luxurious, but its defense was also very tight. There were a large number of guards outside the inn and many defensive arrays were set up inside the inn. Even the bedrooms were separated by a formation that could isolate sound and divine sense from probing. Although the price of staying in the inn was very expensive, there were still many martial arts experts who stayed in the inn. After all, the experts who came from all over the world did not care about spiritual stones. They needed a quiet environment. Ji Tianqing stayed on the 5th floor of the inn, in a simple and elegant bedroom. This bedroom not only had a bedroom, living room, and study room, but also a secret room for cultivation. Ji Tianqing was satisfied with this. After staying in the room, he entered the secret room and closed his eyes to meditate. After traveling for half a month, he was indeed tired. Just before the Divine Martial Sage Assembly, he could rest in the inn for 2 days and recover to his peak state as soon as possible so that he could face the upcoming challenge. However, after meditating for 2 hours, Ji Tianqing frowned. He always felt as if there was a pair of eyes hiding in the dark, staring at him. Whenever he vaguely felt a sense of vigilance. After reaching the martial sage realm, his perception had become stronger and sharper. Even if someone cursed him from 100 miles away, he could still sense it. Strange, this is the first time I came to Wangtian City. There are no enemies here and I am not ostentatious. Who would be spying on me? This thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind. Puzzled, he quietly released his divine senses and extended them in all directions. Although there were many arrays in the inn, they could not block his divine senses. Soon, his divine senses covered the entire palace and he detected hundreds of different auras. The various scenes in the inn appeared clearly in his mind. In the hall on the 1st floor, the shopkeeper stood behind the tall counter, fiddling with the abacus and looking at the account book. More than 10 guards guarded the door. There were also 2 groups of travel-worn martial artists who were asking the waiter if there was a room. In the hundreds of rooms on the 2nd to 5th floor, there were martial artists from all over the world. Most of them were from the human tribe, but there were a few from the foreign tribe. Most of the people were in groups of 3 or 5, but there were also a few who were alone like him. However, 2 groups of people caught Ji Tianqing's attention. A group of people was staying in the A-ranked VIP room on the 3rd floor. It was a young man with a graceful bearing. He was dressed luxuriously and had a dignified appearance. Inside and outside the room, there were 8 maids and more than 30 guards and attendants. All of them were extremely respectful. Most importantly, the young man's aura had reached the martial sage realm. The other group of people lived on the 4th floor. They lived in ordinary rooms with only 6 people. The leader was a tall and sturdy man. He wore a purple robe and a dark golden cape. His entire body exuded a dignified and domineering aura. This person was also a martial sage and his body contained the aura of wind and thunder. The 5 people who traveled with him all had the strength of the tribulation realm, and they all wore the same white robes. They looked like fellow disciples. A tiny East arrival in actually has 2 martial saints. It seems that the influence of the Divine Martial Sage Assembly should not be underestimated. It actually attracted all the martial sage experts of the continent here. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and muttered to himself. Then, he quietly moved his spiritual consciousness away and continued to explore the inn. After a while, he found a clue and found his target. At the entrance of the inn, there were 12 guards in armor and holding swords. They stood upright and guarded the door. 11 of the guards looked straight ahead and had a cold and dignified posture. Only a skinny guard stared at the entrance from time to time, and then looked at the stairs in the hall. Although he tried to hide it, he acted naturally when he looked around and did not attract attention. However, his subtle movements and expressions could not escape Ji Tianqing's eyes. Other than the guards at the entrance, there were also 2 young men in cotton clothes at the back door. They were using a wooden cart to pull a few buckets and had been staying at the back door. On the surface, they looked like the workers of the inn who were working. But in reality, they had been staring at the back door, carefully observing everyone who came in and out. These 3 people were all sneaky and seemed very suspicious. However, Ji Tianqing did not take it to heart. What really made him vigilant was a black-robed man who lived on the 5th floor. This person was wearing a cloak and hid his true face, hiding in the room at the end of the corridor. He was wearing some kind of magic treasure that could hide and conceal his magic power aura. However, he was secretly using a diamond-shaped crystal to monitor the movements of the entire floor. Ji Tianqing observed for a while and found that this person's attention was mostly focused on his room. Moreover, this person was secretly releasing his spiritual consciousness to check the situation in his room. Humph, he really is coming for me. Although this guy used a secret technique to hide his spiritual consciousness, he is too naive. Did he think he could hide it from me? Ji Tianqing frowned slightly, a cold light flashed in his eyes. In the Tianju divine nation, other than martial god Tianju, there are only people from the Broken Sky Alliance who have a grudge with me. I wonder which faction these people belong to. Actually, he vaguely had an answer in his heart. Martial god Tianju wanted the mystery of the Pillar of Heaven's mountain's ascension, so he would naturally secretly deal with him. However, if martial god Tianju wanted to make a move, why would he send these shrimp soldiers and crab generals? His vision was too low. Therefore, the answer was obvious. Ji Tianqing ignored the people who were secretly monitoring him and continued to meditate in the secret room. However, his spiritual consciousness seemed to extend out faintly, keeping an eye on the movements of those people. 4 hours later, it was late at night. The bustling Sky City gradually quieted down. East arrival in also fell into silence, only the lights in each room were lit. At this moment, the black-robed man who lived at the end of the corridor on the 5th floor quietly left his room. As soon as he left the inn, the guard at the entrance of the hall and the 2 linen-clothed men at the back door also scattered and left. Ji Tianqing also ended his meditation, used the invisibility technique, and quietly flew out of the inn. He followed the black-robed man, passed through the dark night sky, and flew out of Sky City. The black-robed man was very cautious. He circled the city twice before leaving from the corner of the city wall. After leaving Wangtian City, he sped up and flew towards the west. After a short 15 minutes, he flew out 800 miles and arrived at a mountain peak that was thousands of feet tall. This mountain peak was very ordinary among the mountains and was not eye-catching. However, on the peak of the mountain, under the cover of many towering trees, there was an ancient and quiet manor. The black-robed man descended from the sky and landed outside the manor. He cautiously checked the surroundings, and seeing that no one was following him, he quietly entered the manor. The manor was pitch black and deathly silent. It looked as if no one lived here and had been abandoned for a long time. Chapter 2151. Ji Tianqing had used the Armillary Heaven secret technique and had already merged with heaven and earth. He quietly landed at the entrance of the manor and glanced at the plaque on the door. The plaque made of bluestone had long been modeled, and the words on it were also blurred. But Ji Tianqing could still recognize that it was the 3 words, Chieftain Garden. Even though there was a large defensive formation that enveloped the entire manor. But he easily broke through the formation and entered Chieftain Garden. He knew the whereabouts of the black-robed man like the back of his hand. He passed through the garden and corridor without any obstruction, entered a green bamboo sea, and also entered the rockery. At the same time, in the depths of the manor, in a dimly lit secret room, the black-robed man respectfully knelt on the ground and was kowtowing. 10 steps in front of him, there was a throne made of green spirit jade, and a man in a purple robe sat on it. This person was tall and muscular, with a black cloak on his shoulders and a silver mask on his face. It was unknown what material the mask was made of, but it actually shone brightly in the darkness, as if there were stars flashing. The mask covered the black-robed man's face, only revealing a pair of long and sharp eyes. His black pupils were very deep, revealing calmness and wisdom. The masked man sat on the throne with his hands flat on his knees, meditating. Seeing that the black-robed man had returned, he revealed a cold gaze and asked in a low and dignified voice, "Fu Yu, how is the situation?" The black-robed man named Fu Yu hurriedly cupped his fists and bowed, and said respectfully, reporting to Lord Baishao, "Since 6 days ago, I have sent people to guard the 4 city gates. Anyone who enters Sky-Gazing City cannot escape the eyes of this subordinate. Just this afternoon, that person finally came and entered Sky City from the East Gate." The masked man was Lord Baishao. Hearing Fu Yu's words, his eyes flashed with a bright light, and he asked excitedly, "Oh, he finally came. Ha ha ha. I already expected that brat has always been arrogant and will not remember the previous grudges. The Divine Marshal's Sacred Assembly is such a big event, he will definitely come. Fu Yu, where is that person now? Did he bring any companions? Have you met anyone after entering Wangtian City?" Fu Yu answered truthfully, that person did not bring any companions. He entered Sky-Gazing City alone and has never met with anyone else. He is now staying at the East Arrival Inn. Bai Shao nodded slightly as a cold smile flashed through his eyes. He said coldly, "That's good. It's not convenient for us to find him for revenge, but he has delivered himself to our doorstep. This time, we'll make sure he doesn't return." Fu Yu also revealed a triumphant sneer as she added, "Although it's rumored that this brat broke through to the Martial Saint realm not long ago, he's still a Martial Saint." However, with Lord White Firmament personally taking action, it was naturally an easy task. This subordinate knows that Lord White Firmament and Lord Heavenly Slayer are both patrol envoys of our alliance. They are also fellow disciples of the same sect and have always had a deep relationship. Very soon, Lord Baishao will be able to kill that kid and avenge Lord Tian Shang. He will also be able to comfort Lord Tian Shang's soul in heaven. Hearing Fu Yu's words, Baishao shook his head. A cold light flickered in his eyes as he said faintly, "No, Fu Yu, you are wrong. Heavenly Slayer and I are indeed from the same sect, but we don't have much of a deep friendship. The reason why I volunteered to carry out this mission is to complete the Alliance leader's instructions. After all, our alliance is the #1 martial alliance in the mainland and we are deeply respected by millions of sects. He's just a brat and he dares to go against our alliance. He even killed our branch leader and patrol envoys. If we don't get rid of this brat, what prestige will our alliance have in the future?" Fu Yu hurriedly cupped her fists and bowed. She said respectfully, "Lord White Firmament is right." Bai Shao chuckled and continued, "Furthermore, our alliance spent half a year investigating that brat's background. It said that he is the #1 God's disciple in the Luoshui Holy Kingdom. He also calls himself the #1 genius of the human race and has created many legends. Previously, before he broke through to the Martial Saint realm, he was able to kill patrol envoys Tian Shang. However, we don't know how he did it. However, his strength is definitely not ordinary and his methods are extraordinary. Now that he has broken through to the Martial Saint realm, he is like a tiger that has grown wings. His strength must be even more powerful. Our alliance has always acted swiftly and decisively. We will definitely not do anything that we are not confident in. Although I am conceited, I do not dare to be careless in this matter. Naturally, I will do my best. Hearing his words, Fu Yu was stunned. Her face was filled with doubt as she asked, Lord White Firmament, what do you mean? Bai Xiao smiled confidently and said calmly, I have already mobilized 50 of our alliance's top powers to lie in ambush around Strange Maple Garden. They will be on standby at any time. Furthermore, our alliance leader has already come out of seclusion and decided to use this matter to establish our prestige in case the other martial forces look down on our alliance. Now, our alliance leader is on his way and I believe that he will arrive soon. When that time comes, no matter how powerful that brat is, he will definitely die. Fu Yu was shocked and said in disbelief, Lord White Firmament, that brat is very young and has just broken through to the martial saint realm. Is it worth our alliance mobilizing so many people? I think that Lord White Firmament and the 50 top powers will be enough to tear that brat into pieces. I didn't expect that even our alliance leader would be alerted and rush over personally. Bai Xiao nodded and said meaningfully, Fu Yu, you are only a small branch leader. How can you guess what our alliance leader is thinking? So what if we mobilize so many people and make a mountain out of a molehill? The alliance leader has been in seclusion for more than 200 years and has not shown himself. It is inevitable that the newly risen martial forces in the mainland will overstep their boundaries. The alliance leader wants to use this matter to establish his prestige and intimidate those forces who have ulterior motives. So that's how it is, subordinate understands. Fu Yu came to a sudden realization and hurriedly bowed. Bai Xiao waved his hand and instructed, all right, return to the inn and keep an eye on him. If there are any abnormalities, report to me immediately. Fu Yu quickly cupped her fists and bowed. Her voice was sonorous as she said, I will do as you command. I will take my leave. With that, she turned and opened the door to the secret chamber and was about to leave. However, just as she opened the stone door, her body froze on the spot. Her face under the cloak was filled with shock and astonishment as her eyes widened. This was because a young man in a white robe was standing at the door of the secret chamber and was looking at her with a cold smile on his face. He. I am right here. Why do you need to spy on me in the inn? Without a doubt, the person who had come was Ji Tianqing. Not only was Fu Yu staring at him in shock, but even Bai Xiao's body shook and his eyes were filled with shock. In the next moment, Fu Yu regained his senses and a murderous look appeared on his face. She shouted angrily, Brat, you actually followed me here. Chapter 2152. As he spoke, Fu Yu raised both his fists and punched towards Ji Tianqing's head. His fists emitted a dazzling golden light and emitted a violent and fierce aura. Even a huge rock or a city wall would be shattered instantly, let alone a body of flesh and blood. However, Ji Tianqing did not take Fu Yu seriously at all. A mocking sneer still hung on his face. He raised his right hand and casually slammed his palm towards Fu Yu. Boom! With a dull explosion, Fu Yu's fists exploded on the spot and a rain of blood splattered out. At the same time, Fu Yu flew backwards with blood spurting out of his 7 orifices and crashed violently towards Bai Xiao. While he was still in mid-air, Fu Yu's heart and soul had already been shattered. By the time he crashed in front of Bai Xiao, he had already lost all signs of life and turned into a corpse. Bai Xiao was indeed a patrol envoy and a martial saint. He could remain calm in the face of such a drastic change and remained seated on his throne. With a cold look in his eyes, he reached out and caught Fu Yu's corpse and threw it on the ground. His eyes were fixed on Ji Tianqing the entire time and did not shift away at all. Kid, I said that you were arrogant and conceited, but I underestimated you. I never thought that you would be so arrogant that you would sneak into wonderful Maple Garden to die. Bai Xiao glared sharply at Ji Tianqing and shouted in a cold tone. Ji Tianqing calmly stepped into the secret room and said with a cold smile, I heard your conversation clearly. Since someone wants my life, then of course I have to personally come and see who it is that dares to act so recklessly. Bai Xiao was not in a hurry to attack and shouted in a dignified tone, "Kid, I really don't know if you're too conceited or too ignorant. You've offended the Broken Heaven Alliance, the #1 martial Dao faction in the continent. Apart from the 3 divine kingdoms, no one and no faction can fight against our alliance. You're the one who's tired of living if you're in such a hurry to die." Ji Tianqing glanced at him pitifully and laughed coldly. "Only a frog at the bottom of a well like you would praise the Broken Heaven Alliance to the heavens. In my eyes, the heaven-shattering alliance is nothing but a motley crew. What is there to fear? You." Bai Xiao was so angry that his body trembled, and his eyes were covered with a layer of red. In his rage, his qi and blood almost flowed in the opposite direction, and he could not help but go berserk. He never thought that Ji Tianqing would actually be arrogant to such an extent that he did not even put the heaven-shattering alliance in his eyes. Ji Tianqing wasn't in a hurry to make a move. He said in a playful tone, "You're stalling for time with me because you want to wait for those 50 tribulation transcending experts to arrive. This can only mean that your heart is filled with fear. You and I haven't even fought yet, and you've already lost." Bai Xiao immediately frowned, his eyes flashing with shame and indignation. But what Ji Tianqing said was the truth, so he couldn't refute it. Ji Tianqing continued, "I've always hated trouble, so tonight, I plan to make a clean break with the heaven-breaking alliance. Aren't you delusional? Are you still hoping that those 50 experts will come and join forces with you to attack me? Since that's the case, then I'll wait for them to come, and then I'll destroy your delusions in front of you." Bai Xiao's eyes suddenly widened, revealing a look of shock. You bastard, you're really arrogant to the point of being lawless. You've underestimated those 50 elite experts. Even I wouldn't dare to be so careless. Kid, you're dead meat. I'll tear you to pieces." Ji Tianqing only sneered disdainfully, and did not reply. Soon, in the night sky outside Chiefin Garden, there was a slight sound of something breaking through the air. Dozens of black shadows cut through the night sky, and entered the manor as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, those black shadows landed around the sea of bamboos, forming a circle. A total of 50 experts were wearing black outfits and cloaks, concealing their true appearances. They all held sabers, swords, and magic treasures in their hands, and their bodies emitted a fierce killing intent. Everyone moved in an orderly manner, and did not make any noise. 2 of the leaders were about to activate the array in the rockery to enter the secret underground chamber. At this moment, a golden light flashed in the rockery, and a white figure appeared out of thin air. Swoosh! The white-robed figure appeared in the night sky, and his body stood proudly on the rockery. He looked down at the black-robed men around him with an indifferent expression. "You're not slow. You've all arrived so quickly," he said in a calm tone, and a domineering aura spread out. The 50 experts around the sea of bamboos all focused their gazes on him, and they looked stunned. At the same time, a white light lit up in the rockery again. Swoosh! Bai Xiao flew out, and his body stood upright in the night sky, facing off against Ji Tianqing. The black-robed experts saw Bai Xiao appear, and they heaved a sigh of relief, and hurriedly bowed to greet him. "Greetings, Lord Bai Xiao." Bai Xiao's face was as cold as ice, and he ordered in a cold tone, "What are you waiting for? Kill that brat." The black-robed experts came back to their senses, and they hurriedly waved their swords and Dharma treasures, and used their unparalleled killing moves to besiege Ji Tianqing. Swoosh! 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 Suddenly, the light of swords and sabers lit up, dispelling the darkness in the night sky. Hundreds of spell lights and shadows poured down on Ji Tianqing like a flood from the sky. Ji Tianqing was surrounded and attacked by everyone, but he was not afraid at all. He formed a spell with both hands, and shouted in a dignified tone, "Sword rain." In the blink of an eye, he formed 99 Dharma seals with both hands, and they condensed into a dazzling starlight that bloomed like a lotus. At the same time, in the distant sky, tens of thousands of cracks appeared in the sky. Tens of thousands of starlights lit up, and poured down like a torrential rain. In an instant, tens of thousands of starlight swords lit up the night sky, dispelling the boundless darkness. The area became as bright as day, and it was so bright that people could not open their eyes. Countless martial artists and civilians in Wangtian City were also awakened by the earth-shattering aura of the stars. Of course, before the starlight sword rain fell, the Dharma spells cast by many experts hit Ji Tianqing first. Bang! 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 A series of muffled sounds burst out, like muffled thunder, continuous and unending. The colorful brilliance of the Dharma spells completely drowned Ji Tianqing. However, he was wrapped in a layer of golden light, and he stood in the night sky like a towering mountain, motionless. No matter how many Dharma spells bombarded him, he was not injured at all, and he did not even take half a step back. His flesh and skin were far tougher than a divine artifact, so how could those tribulation stage experts hurt him? Such a scene caused by Xiao and the 50 black-clothed experts to reveal expressions of indescribable terror. They could not believe this result, and they wanted to use their ultimate skills to besiege Ji Tianqing again. But it was too late, and the monstrous sword rain finally fell. Swoosh! 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 The sharp and ear-piercing sound of something breaking through the air enveloped the entire mountain peak. Tens of thousands of starlight swords, with the power to destroy heaven and earth, drowned the entire Chieftain Garden. As the starlight bloomed like a mushroom cloud, a loud noise that shook the 9 heavens immediately sounded. Boom! 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 Chapter 2153. These 50 powerhouses in black were all at the 2nd to 4th level of the tribulation stage. They were all the elite powerhouses of the Broken Sky Alliance. Only a super force like the Broken Sky Alliance could gather so many martial Dao powerhouses. However, under the bombardment of the sword rain, the powerhouses were as weak as paper and could not resist at all. If they joined forces and formed a defensive formation, they might have a chance to survive. However, it happened so suddenly that Bai Xiao and the powerhouses did not expect Ji Tianqing's strength to be so terrifying. The earth-shattering sound echoed in the night sky for a long time before it gradually dissipated. The dust and starlight that covered the sky could be clearly seen from thousands of miles away. It lasted for 100 breaths of time before it disappeared. When the night sky became clear again, Bai Xiao was stunned by the scene before him. He saw that the huge Chieftain Garden had turned into a mess of ruins. There were deep pits and dilapidated walls everywhere. Even the entire mountain peak had been blasted into pieces. The mountain was full of cracks and countless rocks had collapsed. The 50 powerhouses in black had all disappeared. Only the fragments of Dharma treasures and weapons scattered in the ruins, as well as some broken bones and strips of cloth, proved that they had once existed. Without a doubt, many of the powerhouses had been killed by the 10,000 swords. Even Bai Xiao himself was covered in blood and his robe was torn and tattered. Only the silver mask on his face was intact and shone with faint starlight. However, there was a trace of dark red blood at the corner of his mouth under the mask. When the 10,000 starlight swords came down, he was also enveloped by the sword rain. Even though he was a martial sage powerhouse, he could not block the power of the starlight swords and his internal organs were injured on the spot. But he'd completely disregarded the pain in his body, and his eyes stared fixedly at the ruins while his mind was filled with terror since long ago. This is impossible. Impossible. There is no justice in this. Bai Xiao stared at Ji Tianqing with bloodshot eyes and roared to himself in a hoarse voice. Even though he had seen it with his own eyes, he could not accept this fact. He could not believe that a young man who had just broken through to the martial sage realm could have such destructive power. In the past, he had guessed and pondered many times. Ji Tianqing only had the strength of a tribulation transcendence realm cultivator. How could he kill Inspector Tian Chang? There must be something else going on. It was most likely that Inspector Tian Shang had encountered some kind of danger and was already heavily injured. That was why he had died at the hands of Ji Tianqing. Before this, Bai Xiao had always believed this and was extremely certain. But now, his views and thoughts had finally changed. He had no choice but to believe that such a monstrous talent like Ji Tianqing did indeed have the ability to kill Heavenly Slayer. Of course, there was also him. Ji Tianqing stood in the night sky, his robes as white as snow, untainted by even a speck of dust. He looked at Bai Xiao calmly and said in an indifferent tone, "These are the 50 experts you prepared and arranged in advance. Now that they're all dead, it's time for you to go on your way. You can say your last words." Bai Xiao immediately trembled when he heard that. Grief and indignation flashed through his eyes. He glared angrily at Ji Tianqing, his hands holding two blazing white swords, his whole body bursting with an unyielding fighting spirit. "Ji Tianqing, you bastard, you've gone too far. No matter how powerful you are, you shouldn't humiliate the Broken Sky Alliance like this. The 100,000 martial Dao experts of our alliance will fight you to the death." Bai Xiao roared at the top of his lungs. His tone was extremely solemn, as though he was facing death with equanimity. Ji Tianqing shook his head gently and said with an indifferent expression, "You're just an inspector, not an arbitrary heaven. What right do you have to represent the Broken Sky Alliance? All right, you've said your last words. It's time for you to go on your way." As soon as he finished speaking, Ji Tianqing punched Bai Xiao with his left hand. His right hand formed a sword finger and slashed out a huge golden sword at him. Star-shattering fist. Sky-breaking sword. The huge golden fist shadow smashed toward Bai Xiao with the power to shatter everything. Bai Xiao's expression changed immediately. He quickly waved his swords and slashed out dozens of snow-white sword radiances, forming a huge sword net in front of him. Bam! The gigantic golden fist shadow struck the white light sword net with a loud bang, causing a deafening explosion. Instantly, the white sword net was smashed into pieces, scattering white light fragments all over the sky. The power of the golden fist shadow did not diminish. It hit Bai Xiao again. Bai Xiao was immediately sent flying, tumbling down the mountain. The great golden sword of light followed closely behind, slashing down from the sky towards Bai Xiao. The huge golden sword was about to hit his head, but he was still rolling in the night sky. In the next moment, he was about to be killed by the sword radiance. At this critical moment, Bai Xiao's body lit up with a dazzling white light, and he disappeared with a swoosh. He actually used his trump card at this critical moment. In an instant, he crossed a distance of 50 miles and appeared in the night sky far away. That sword that could split heaven and earth was dodged by him just like that. Boom! The huge sword slashed the mountain, creating an earth-shattering explosion. The mountain peak was already full of cracks and holes. After being slashed by the huge sword, it completely collapsed. For a moment, countless rocks and soil rolled on the wasteland, creating a huge rumbling sound and creating a huge cloud of dust. Bai Xiao saw this from afar. He was so shocked that his face turned pale, and cold sweat broke out on his back. Luckily, I mastered the white full fleeting time and dodged that sword strike. Otherwise, I would have most likely died. No. This bastard is too powerful. I'm afraid I'm no match for him. I can't stay here any longer. He muttered to himself and immediately made up his mind. He turned around and fled to the north. However, Ji Tianqing crossed a distance of 50 miles in one step and appeared beside him with a swoosh, blocking his way. What? You're still thinking of escaping? Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly. Bai Xiao was embarrassed and angry. He felt a fire burning in his chest, almost bursting his body. He glared fiercely at Ji Tianqing and shouted angrily, Ji Tianqing, don't be too arrogant. This is the Sky City of the Heaven and Holy Nation, not the Luoshui Holy Nation. You can't do whatever you want here. Although Bai Xiao's tone was fierce, it was obviously a facade. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked playfully, I said I'll kill you, so I'll kill you. Do I need to pick a place? Bai Xiao was completely humiliated. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Ji Tianqing. Don't forget that the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly is about to begin. Many martial sages have gathered in the Sky City. The commotion caused by our battle has already alarmed the Sky City. You dare to kill here, aren't you afraid of the Heaven and Holy Nation's punishment? Ji Tianqing sneered contemptuously, you sent people to spy on me and even ambushed 50 experts to kill me. Didn't you think of the consequences? The Broken Sky Alliance dared to attack me, why can't I fight back? Chapter 2154. Ji Tianqing's patience had run out. As soon as he finished his words, he struck out like lightning. Sky-piercing finger. He pinched his sword fingers with his right hand and pointed them at Bai Xiao. A blinding white light shot out, carrying the power to pierce through everything, and arrived in front of Bai Xiao. Bai Xiao's expression changed drastically. He instinctively waved his two swords in front of him. Clang! With a crisp sound, the two swords in his hands flashed with white light, and he was sent flying on the spot. Immediately after, the sky-piercing finger pierced through Bai Xiao's magical energy shield and pierced his chest. The purple robe he was wearing was instantly torn into pieces, revealing the black soft armor he was wearing. Although the soft armor was a sage-level magic treasure and had extremely strong defensive power, it was still not enough. After the sky-piercing finger hit the black soft armor, it was unable to pierce through it and only left a dent. However, the powerful sky-piercing finger still pierced through the soft armor and hit Bai Xiao's heart. Puff! Bai Xiao's body shook and his face turned as pale as paper. He opened his mouth and spat out a jet of dark red blood. His body stiffened and his eyes widened like copper bells. His eyes were filled with fear and despair. Ji Tianqing's finger had actually managed to penetrate his soft armor and severely injure his heart meridian. His heart was shattered, his meridians were broken, his magic power and blood stopped flowing, and his physical body was almost destroyed. Bai Xiao simply couldn't understand how Ji Tianqing could use such a strange and unpredictable finger technique. Even if he was wearing a sage-level armor, he would not be able to do it. This was too horrifying. At the same time, Ji Tianqing shouted again and raised his hand to shoot out a golden shadow. Sky-capturing dragon claw. A golden dragon claw the size of a mountain appeared out of thin air in the night sky, descending from the sky and enveloping the white sky. Bai Xiao felt the aura of death approaching and his eyes were filled with fear. He had no doubt that once the golden dragon claw hit him, his physical body would be destroyed and his bones would be smashed into pieces. At that time, even his divine soul would fall into Ji Tianqing's hands. His fate was self-evident. However, at this critical moment, a clear and cold voice suddenly rang out in the night sky. Stop! Along with this cold shout, a sword light as bright as the stars and as bright as the moon attacked from afar. Shwa! 1,000 feet long sword projection instantly pierced through the night sky and struck the golden dragon's claw. With a muffled bang, the golden dragon claw was pierced through by the sword light. Countless cracks appeared on its surface, and countless fragments of golden light burst forth. The golden dragon claw crumbled, and Bai Xiao's life-threatening crisis disappeared on the spot. However, the impact of the collision between the dragon claw and the sword light formed a golden shockwave that ruthlessly blasted Bai Xiao. Boom! He was sent flying again. Blood spurted out from his 7 orifices, and cracks appeared on his body. He was already severely injured, and his body was on the verge of death. Once again, he was hit by the shockwave. This time, he couldn't escape. His heart was completely shattered. Shwa! His lifeless body fell from the night sky and fell powerlessly into the ruins. A dazzling white divine soul flew out from the corpse. It flew into the night sky in a panic and turned around to escape. Although the sudden turn of events saved Bai Zhao's life, it also caused his physical body to be completely destroyed, leaving only his soul behind. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and turned his head to look in the direction of Wangtian city. He saw a silver-white moonlight speeding towards him at lightning speed. Shwa! In the blink of an eye, the white light arrived above the ruins and stopped in the night sky 1,000 feet away. After the white light dissipated, 2 figures appeared. The person in the lead was a young man in a silver-white long robe and a dark golden cloak with dragon patterns on it. This person was 8 feet tall and had a handsome appearance. He had sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes. He exuded a noble and majestic aura. Although he looked like he was only in his 30s. However, Ji Tianqing could clearly sense that this person's strength was unfathomable. He was at least a rank 8 martial sage. The person who had released the sword radiance and destroyed the golden dragon claw was also this young man in the silver robe. Behind the young man in the silver robe, there was a burly middle-aged man who was more than 2 meters tall. This person was wearing a bright silver armor and a dragon feather 9-star helmet. His square face was full of vicissitudes and domineering. His strength had reached the rank 7 martial sage realm. Ji Tianqing frowned and looked at the 2 of them expressionlessly. He thought to himself, these 2 people are so powerful and are the top among the martial sages. I wonder where they are from. At that moment, Bai Zhao's divine soul saw the person who had come and quickly flew to the young man in the silver robe. Bai Zhao greets the eldest divine son. I am extremely grateful for your help. Bai Zhao expressed his gratitude to the young man in the silver robe through his divine soul. There was an obvious sense of relief in his tone. When Ji Tianqing heard Bai Zhao's voice, he raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, the eldest divine son. Could he be the eldest son of martial god Tianju? When he thought of this, he suddenly realized, I see. No wonder this person is so powerful despite his young age. At that moment, the eldest divine son looked at Bai Zhao's divine soul calmly and asked in a dignified tone, Bai Zhao, when I arrived at Wangtian city tonight, I saw the commotion outside the city and rushed over to check the situation. Tell me, what exactly is going on? Why was your physical body destroyed and only your divine soul left? The eldest divine son's expression and tone were very calm and gave a good impression. At first glance, one could tell that he was an elegant, knowledgeable, upright, and honorable young master who handled matters impartially. It was hard for one to feel disgusted by him. Bai Zhao was instantly filled with grief and indignation. He complained angrily, eldest divine son, you must seek justice for me. That bastard is from the Luoshui Holy Kingdom. He killed our patrol envoy Tian Shan, branch leader Qin Haishan and hundreds of elites. His hands are stained with blood. I heard that he was coming to participate in the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly, so I sent people to investigate in secret. I wanted to seek justice for my dead colleagues. Who knew that this person was so vicious and evil that he found Chiefeng Garden by following the clues? After he appeared, he used extremely cruel methods and brutally killed all the guards of Strange Maple Garden. I was so angry that I confronted him and was severely injured. If it weren't for you, the eldest divine son, who came to save me in time, I would have been killed by him. Bai Zhao complained about Ji Tianqing's crimes in a tearful voice. His words were full of grievances and unwillingness. Those who heard it were moved and those who heard it were sad. After the eldest divine son heard it, he couldn't help but frown and look coldly at Ji Tianqing. The middle-aged man behind him was also furious. He shouted in a dignified tone, "Boy, what's your name? Where are you from? How dare you start a massacre outside Wangtian City?" He was truly audacious and unscrupulous to the extreme. Chapter 2155. The middle-aged man in armor was obviously a person of high status. His aura was extremely strong. His stern words contained a frightening power. When his voice spread over a radius of 10 miles, dozens of flowing lights flew over from the direction of Wangtian City. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, more than 30 flowing lights flew above the ruins and stopped in the night sky. In each stream of light, there were 2 or 3, or even 3 or 5 martial arts experts. Most of them had reached the martial sage realm and their auras were extraordinary. A few experts who were only in the tribulation passing realm stood in the outer area and watched from afar. There were a few groups of powerful martial saints with high statuses standing closest to Ji Tianqing and the eldest divine son. Even those powerhouses cupped their hands and greeted the eldest divine son. "Greetings, eldest son of God." A young man in a long green robe with his hair tied up in a bun and a golden feather crown stood closest to the eldest son of God. He cupped his hands and bowed respectfully. There were 4 attendants behind him. They were all young and handsome swordsmen. They wore the same white robe and carried ancient swords with cloud patterns on their backs. The eldest son of God nodded slightly and returned the greeting. "Greetings, sacred Emperor Qingshan." There was no doubt that the young man in the long green robe was martial sage Qingshan. When Ji Tianqing entered Wangtian City, he had seen martial sage Qingshan's ceremonial procession, but he did not see his face. On the other side, 100 steps away from the eldest son of God, a white-haired elder with a ruddy complexion also cupped his hands and bowed to the eldest son of God. "Greetings, Prince Yuan Zhen, with my beloved disciple, Chaoying." The elder was in a grey robe. His back was a little stooped and he looked ordinary. However, his strength was not to be underestimated. He had reached the 7th level martial sage realm and was a leading figure in the martial world. Behind him was a young woman who looked to be about 30 years old. This woman was wearing a simple and elegant white long dress with a silver belt inlaid with jade around her waist. She wore a Taoist crown on her head, giving her a rather valiant look. Her figure was tall and slender, and her appearance was dignified and generous. Although she could not be considered a peerless beauty, her temperament was very outstanding, and she was still fresh in people's memories. She was the grey-robed elder's disciple, Chao Ying. Most importantly, she was one of the best among the young martial sages and possessed the strength of a rank 4 martial sage. The eldest divine son cupped his hands at the grey-robed old man and said with a smile, "Greetings, martial sage. I haven't seen Miss Xiaoying for decades. It seems like your strength has improved again." Chaoying hurriedly bowed to the eldest son of God and revealed a graceful smile. She said in a clear voice, "You're too kind, eldest son." As she spoke, she looked at the eldest divine son with eyes as bright as stars. There was a hint of undetectable admiration in her eyes. Immediately after, several other groups of experts also bowed and greeted the eldest divine prince. Ji Tianqing had been watching from the sidelines and gradually understood the situation. "I've seen the jade slip that Granny Long gave me before, and it introduced this Yuan Zhen. This Yuan Zhen is the eldest son of martial god Tianju and was born more than 1,600 years ago. He is the most talented among the many children of martial god Tianju. Not only was his talent outstanding, but he was also one of the most outstanding among the divine sons when it came to dealing with people and scheming means. He has reached the rank 8 martial sage realm at such a young age and is known as the #1 genius of heaven and divine kingdom. He is the most promising person to break through to the god realm. Martial god Tianju also thinks highly of him and nurtured him as his successor. Even the grandest divine martial sacred assembly was given to Yuanzhen to host. Now it seems that the information recorded by Granny Long is true. This Yuanzhen is indeed outstanding and knows how to win people's hearts. The various martial sages and forces are very respectful to him. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing could not help but glance at Yuanzhen and thought to himself, the divine martial sacred assembly is about to start. Yuanzhen and the various martial sages will gather in Sky City, but something like this happened tonight. I wonder how Yuanzhen will deal with it. On the surface, the Broken Sky Alliance was an independent martial arts organization and did not serve any divine kingdom. But in reality, the Broken Sky Alliance has long become the lackey of heaven and divine kingdom. I think that Yuanzhen will not let this matter rest. He had long guessed the relationship between the Broken Sky Alliance and heaven and divine kingdom and had already made plans. Soon, all the tyrants had greeted Yuanzhen. Everyone began to ask Yuanzhen what had happened here and why did it cause such a huge battle. Yuanzhen nodded slightly and pointed to the middle-aged man behind him and said to the crowd, the divine martial sacred assembly is about to start, but something like this happened outside Sky City. I am deeply regretful and angry. As for what happened, I hope that Sir Qin, the commander of the divine guards, can explain it to everyone. Hearing his words, everyone's gaze fell on the middle-aged man. Some people recognized him and showed him respect. Some people who did not know him then realized his identity. He was the commander of the divine guards of heaven and divine kingdom. He was martial god Tianju's most trusted right-hand man and was the commander of the 100,000 divine guards. It was rare to see him. Sir Qin stepped forward and cupped his fists at the surrounding forces. He said in a sonorous tone, everyone, His Highness and I have just arrived. Just now, I've already asked Bai Xiao, and only then did I know what happened. Then, he pointed to Ji Tianqing who was not far away and said in a dignified tone, this person is from Luoshui Divine Kingdom and is also a young martial saint who came to participate in the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly. However, he has a grudge with the Broken Sky Alliance and has killed hundreds of Broken Sky Alliance's elites and a branch leader. He also murdered Inspector Tian Chang. Sir Qin repeated Bai Zhao's words word for word. When the forces heard this, they were instantly shocked and looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. Of course, the vast majority of people were gloating over his misfortune and felt pity for him. In their eyes, this person did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. He dared to have a death grudge with the Broken Sky Alliance and even dared to kill outside Sky City. He was simply tired of living. Tonight, First Divine Prince Yuanzhen was present and would definitely solve this matter. However, just as the crowd was discussing, Ji Tianqing opened his mouth to speak. He looked at Sir Qin expressionlessly and said in an indifferent tone, Sir Qin is only repeating Bai Zhao's words. This is Bai Zhao's one-sided story and it is not to be believed. Sir Qin frowned and asked with a gloomy face, Bai Zhao's physical body was destroyed by you and only his divine soul was left. The 50 guards of Chieftain Garden were also killed by you and died without a complete corpse. Could it be that this matter is false? How could I have wronged you? Ji Tianqing sneered with contempt and said, Bai Xiao sent people to spy on me secretly and secretly gathered 50 tribulation stage experts to kill me and avenge Tian Chang. They were not as skilled as me and were killed on the spot after I saw through their scheme. Chapter 2156. Lord Qin was at a loss for words. His face was filled with anger as he shouted, Brat, you're twisting words and forcing logic. Ji Tianqing glanced at him, then looked at Yuanzhen with a faint smile and asked, What's wrong? Lord Qin's words are reasonable, and I'm twisting words and forcing logic just because I refuted. Since Heaven's End God Nation is so unreasonable, what's the point of talking nonsense? Lord Qin's face turned black as he glared at Ji Tianqing with a murderous glint in his eyes. Brat, you're inverting right and wrong. You're the one who killed the guards of Strange Maple Garden, destroyed it, and severely injured by Xiao. This is obvious to all. No matter how you quibble, you can't deny it. Ji Tianqing sneered, I'm new here and am not even familiar with Sky-Gazing City. Why would I come to Strange Maple Garden? Isn't it because Bai Xiao plotted against me? Your so-called Strange Maple Garden guards are 50 Tribulation Realm powerhouses, and they're all elites of Heaven's End Alliance. Does Lord Qin think that Heaven's End Alliance is so powerful that Tribulation Realm powerhouses are only fit to be manor guards? Anyone with a brain would understand what's going on. But Lord Qin, you're biased towards Bai Xiao and put the blame on me. I think you're either stupid or have ulterior motives. Ji Tianqing scolded Lord Qin mercilessly in front of so many powerful people. Lord Qin was so angry that the veins on his face bulged, and his body emitted a cold murderous intent. Brat! What a sharp tongue! Not only are you twisting right and wrong in front of everyone, but you also dare to insult me. You probably don't know my methods. Tonight, no matter how eloquent you are, it's useless. I'll make you plead guilty. As he spoke, Lord Qin's body lit up with a white light, and he was about to attack Ji Tianqing with a spell. Ji Tianqing sneered and said loudly, everyone saw it. They want to reason, so I'll reason with them. But Lord Qin thinks he's powerful and can do whatever he wants in Heaven's End God Nation. Since he couldn't frame me, he's going to attack me in anger. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being impolite. If I accidentally kill you later, you only have yourself to blame. Don't blame me. As his voice fell, his entire body burst forth with soaring battle intent. His right hand pinched his sword fingers, and an incomparably fierce aura was brewing in his body. He was ready to launch a thunderous attack at any time. Seeing this scene, the surrounding tyrants were all shocked and astonished. Everyone's eyes were focused on Ji Tianqing. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Whispers and discussions also broke out in the crowd. Where did this kid come from? How dare he be so arrogant? Yes. He knows that Lord Qin is the inspector of the immortal guards, but he is not afraid at all. He even said that he would kill Lord Qin. How audacious. From what I can see, this person is still very young. He must have just broken through to the martial sage realm and does not know how powerful Lord Qin is. Lord Qin is a veteran 7th stage realm martial saint. I'm afraid he'll be defeated in 2 or 3 moves. Lord Qin's position is high and powerful. Normal people don't dare to offend him. Moreover, the person standing beside Lord Qin is the eldest divine son, Yuan Zhen, the future master of Heaven Extinction Holy Kingdom. This kid is openly provoking Lord Qin. He obviously doesn't take Yuan Zhen seriously. If they really fight, it will be a big joke. Wouldn't it prove that Heaven Extinction Holy Kingdom is unreasonable and oppressive? From what I can see, the eldest divine son will definitely stop them. He will not let them fight. As the various tyrants were discussing secretly, they glanced at Yuan Zhen to see how he would react. However, Yuan Zhen lowered his head calmly and looked as if he was deep in thought. He did not have the slightest intention to stop them. At the same time, Lord Qin was unable to restrain his anger and attacked. Arrogant kid, go to hell. With a thunderous roar, he threw out 2 mountain-sized flaming fist radiance toward Ji Tianqing. The flaming fist radiance's aura was extremely violent and contained the power to destroy the heavens and earth. It lit up the night sky within a radius of 200 miles. The nearby tyrants could feel the scorching heat and could not help but retreat 100 feet away to avoid being affected by the aftershocks. Ji Tianqing looked at the flaming fist radiance that was coming toward him without the slightest bit of fear. He raised his fists indifferently and punched back with all his might. Star-shattering fist. He threw out 2 silver flaming fist radiance with all his might and smashed toward Lord Qin with cold and mighty star energy. Bang! Bang! The silver and red flaming fist radiance collided in the night sky and let out two deafening bangs. The four flaming fist radiance collapsed at the same time and burst into light fragments that filled the sky. It created a violent shockwave that spread out in all directions. The various tyrants looked fearful and quickly cast defensive spells to block the shockwave that was coming toward them. Ji Tianqing and Lord Qin's exchange of blows was a draw. Neither of them had the upper hand. Mr. Qin froze on the spot. He narrowed his eyes with a serious expression, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The surrounding tyrants were also shocked and looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. Cries of surprise could be heard from the crowd. "Oh my God! That kid took Lord Qin's attack and was not injured at all. This kid has such terrifying strength. He can fight against Lord Qin. He is so young and he is already a 7th level martial sage. This is impossible. If he really has the strength of a 7th level martial sage, he can't be a nobody. Why haven't we seen him before? This is unbelievable. No wonder he dares to be so arrogant and severely injured by Shao of the Heaven-Breaking Alliance." In an instant, everyone stopped looking down on Ji Tianqing and no longer dared to underestimate him. Even Yuan Zhen, who had been pretending to be in deep thought, suddenly raised his head and looked at Ji Tianqing with burning eyes. Lord Qin was shocked and angry. He also felt ashamed. In his anger, he could not help but take out his magic treasure and use all his strength to fight against Ji Tianqing. At this moment, Yuan Zhen waved his hand and shouted coldly, "Qin Zheng, stop." Lord Qin was still angry. He looked at Yuan Zhen unwillingly and asked, "Your Highness, this person is too audacious. He has disregarded our country's laws, shut up." Yuan Zhen shouted coldly again and said in a dignified tone, "Don't forget that we are here to deal with this matter impartially, not to fight with others. I have always convinced people with reason and will never use my power to oppress others." Lord Qin unwillingly stopped and suppressed his anger. He bowed respectfully and said, "Your Highness is right. I will remember this and will not do it again." Yuan Zhen nodded slightly and looked at Ji Tianqing deeply. He said, "Don't worry. I will not wrong a good person, nor will I let a bad person go. I will deal with this matter impartially and give both parties an explanation." "Ha, is that so?" Chapter 2157. Before Lord Qin had struck, Ji Tianqing had thought that Yuan Zhen was a reasonable person when he saw Yuan Zhen's elegant demeanor. However, it turned out that Yuan Zhen was not a good person. Therefore, Su Mo did not like Yuan Zhen at all. He even felt that Yuan Zhen was hypocritical and disgusting. However, Yuan Zhen was not embarrassed at all. He pretended that he had not heard Su Mo's sneer and continued to ask calmly, "After talking for so long, you still don't know who you are. Given your strength and skills, you are definitely not a nobody." Ji Tianqing said calmly, "A real man does not change his name. My name is Tianqing and I am from Luoshui Holy Kingdom." When Yuan Zhen heard what Su Mo had said, his eyes narrowed and a strange look flashed across them. The surrounding powerhouses were also stunned. Soon after, complicated expressions appeared on their faces. Some of them were enlightened and some of them were shocked. Some of them looked curiously at Ji Tianqing and discussed among themselves. "Ji Tianqing. He is Ji Tianqing. That's not right." There was a rumor in the underworld that Ji Tianqing had just broken through to the martial sage realm. How could he fight against Lord Qin? Demon. This guy is definitely a demon and his strength is unfathomable. I have heard that he led the army to fight against the demon tribe at the northern border of Luoshui Holy Kingdom and defeated them. He must be a powerful person. Not only did I hear that he defeated the demon tribe army, but I also heard that he killed Inspector Tian Shang and formed a deadly feud with the Broken Sky Alliance. No wonder Bai Xiao gathered 50 powerhouses to deal with him. This guy is too powerful. Ho ho ho, it's a pity that Bai Xiao is not as powerful as Ji Tianqing. He did not kill Ji Tianqing to avenge Tian Shan. Instead, he got himself killed. Most of the powerhouses had heard of Ji Tianqing's deeds and legends. The crowd became more curious about Su Mo and their eyes were filled with respect and fear. There were two groups of people in the crowd who were looking at Ji Tianqing with complicated expressions. They were either worried or happy. There were 3 young martial sages from the Luoshui divine nation. Their leader was a woman who was 7 feet tall. She wore a palace dress and a crown made of luan and phoenix gemstones. This woman's face was exquisite and beautiful, and her entire body exuded a noble and elegant aura. Her pair of pitch-black eyes were filled with anxiety and worry. She was the Empress of the White Frost Empire, Lu Baishuang. Although the White Frost Empire had many things to do, it was currently rebuilding its home and recuperating. However, she had already arranged the affairs of the empire and insisted on rushing to Sky City to participate in the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly. After all, the Sacred Assembly was held once every 50 years and was extremely important. The 2 experts beside Lu Baishuang were both martial sages from the Luoshui Divine Kingdom. One of them was the #1 sect master of the Eastern Waves Empire. He was only 900 years old, and his name was Zhuomingqi. The other person was from the Tianwu Kingdom. He was the sect leader of the Tianjian sect. His name was Mu Changtian. The 3 of them were all from the Luoshui God Nation, so they were naturally worried about Ji Tianqing from the bottom of their hearts. Moreover, Lu Baishuang was also familiar with Ji Tianqing, and the 2 of them had some indescribable experience. Young Master Ji actually offended the Broken Sky Alliance, and even the divine guards of the Heaven and Divine Kingdom. I hope he can avert the danger. Lu Baishuang stared at Ji Tianqing and muttered to himself in a low voice. Zhuomingqi also revealed a worried expression, and said in a low voice, Young Master Ji is the #1 God disciple of the Luoshui Divine Kingdom, and the Heavenly Imperial Guardian. He is very important to the Divine Master. No matter how domineering the Heaven and Divine Kingdom is, they wouldn't dare to punish young Master Ji on their own, unless the Heaven and Divine Kingdom wants to start a war with us. Mu Changtian thought for a moment, and transmitted his voice to the other 2, Holy Emperor Bai Shuang, Brother Zhua, we should advance and retreat together with young Master Ji. If Yuanjin dares to punish him, we must stand out and fight together with young Master Ji. Even if we don't participate in this Divine Martial Sacred Assembly, we must not weaken the Luoshui Divine Kingdom's momentum. Lu Baishuang and Zhuomingqi both nodded without hesitation. In addition to the 3 of them, there was another group of people standing in the night sky to the west. There were only 2 people in this group, 1 tall and 1 short, 1 male and 1 female. The male was a golden-haired youth who looked to be about 30 years old. His face was fair and handsome, and his blue eyes had a pair of golden pupils. He wore a long golden robe, and the chest and sleeves were embroidered with a golden dragon pattern. He also wore a crown on his head. Standing beside him was a little girl who was about 1 meter tall, and looked like she was carved out of jade. The little girl was extremely nimble and cute. She was wearing a small yellow dress, and her chubby feet were bare. She was sitting on a crescent-shaped flying magic treasure. The 2 of them stared at Ji Tianqing, and they were both relieved and happy, but also a little worried. The little girl muttered to herself, I didn't expect that in just a few years, Tianqing would break through to the martial saint realm and catch up with me. This guy is really monstrous. I could tell that he was not ordinary back then, but it's a pity that I couldn't keep him in the God Bestowment Mountain. The golden-haired youth beside her rubbed the little girl's head and said with a smile, Jiu, you're praising yourself. Ji Tianqing is already on par with Qin Zheng, and you call that catching up with you? He has obviously surpassed you. Without a doubt, this cute little girl was Jiu, the youngest daughter of martial god Taihao. Jiu raised her head and glared at the golden-haired youth. She pouted unhappily and said, "Humph. Seventh brother, you're mocking me again. Tianqing is a rare genius, and it's natural that he has surpassed me. I'm afraid that when the two of you fight in the void platform, even you won't be his match. I'll laugh at you then." The golden-haired youth glanced at the situation and looked worried. He sighed softly and said, "I do want to participate in the Divine Martial Sacred Assembly as soon as possible and spar with Ji Tianqing. However, it's still unknown whether he can resolve tonight's matter." Jiu immediately looked worried. She pulled the golden-haired youth's sleeve and pleaded softly, "Seventh brother, let's help Tianqing, okay? Yuan Zhen is a hypocrite and Qin Jing obviously has bad intentions. They will definitely make things difficult for Tianqing." The golden-haired youth nodded without hesitation and said through voice transmission, "Tianqing was once a member of the Divine Martial Kingdom. He has made great contributions to the kingdom and is highly regarded by our father. It's reasonable that we can't just sit by and do nothing. We must help him get out." When Jiu heard this, she smiled and said, "Yes, I know that seventh brother is the best. He won't just stand by and do nothing." The golden-haired youth nodded and said through voice transmission, "Don't be hasty. Let's observe the situation first." Right at this moment, Yuan Zhen spoke. He looked at Ji Tianqing with shining eyes and said, "So you're Ji Tianqing. It's true that hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. Meeting you in person is even better than hearing about you. I've heard that you're extremely talented and extraordinary. You don't take the martial artists in the world seriously, and you're extremely arrogant. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.